Welcome to the regular council meeting here at the Shaw Auditorium for Monday, June 24, 2013 at 7 p.m. And we'll start off by calling the meeting to order and ask for a list of the late items. Ms. King.
Thank you, Your Worship. We are adding a delegation from Mr. Gord Fuller to item 6A. That's the Mayor's report regarding an announcement of the MOU with the Regional District of Nanaimo. We're replacing page 77 to item 8B, which is a rezoning application for 141 Westwood Road. We are adding delegations from Mr. Jim Taylor and Mr. Ron Boland to item 9A, which is consideration of business improvement bylaws 7168 and 7169. We are replacing pages 138 to 147 to item 9B, which is the purchasing power delegation bylaw. And we are adding a delegation from Mr. Matthew O'Donnell to item 15A, which is reconsideration of Council Resolution 10813 regarding Shaw Go Wi-Fi. And I believe, Your Worship, that Councillor Kipp has an item under late items as well.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Yes, I'm requesting a motion for a 5-minute late delegation from the CanBuild people regarding engineering and things on the Collery Dam.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. I see none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
It'll be under new business, other business.
And Ms. King, that'll be under what item then?
That'll be under other business, Your Worship.
At the very end, on the number I was looking for was 15, is that it?
15B, Your Worship.
15B, thank you. Okay, if we could ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move into motion to adopt the minutes.
Adopt the minutes of 20.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move into 4A, sorry, that was A and B, both you were taking there. And we'll move into the Mayor's report. And I have a report based on the MOU with the Regional District of Nanaimo and the city. But we also have a late, or rather not a late, but a delegation, Mr. Gord Fuller. Mr. Fuller.
Gord Fuller, 604 Nichols Street. Holy moly, this is loud. I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, can we adjust that down? Yeah, it should be okay now. Try.
Okay. Yeah, I was totally amazed when I was reading the paper on Saturday to come across an item in the city log that said Transit Hub, a step closer. And I'll just quote the first paragraph of it. New transit hub for the region is another step closer to reality. The City of Nanaimo and the Regional District of Nanaimo announced they have signed a memorandum of understanding that would allow the RDN to build a new transit center on the Wellcox property recently purchased by the city. Now, this kind of amazed me to see this simply because I know there is a planning process going on for the Wellcox lands. And I could see no other reason for doing something like this and then bringing it public other than to influence the committee on its decisions and what they look at in putting on those properties. So it totally baffles me how this happens. I mean, do you want me
to? Can I just give you a bit of an answer anyway, and you might have more follow-up. But this was something that the RDN and the city had agreed to, and the RDN is going to be financially participating and was in the purchase of the site. So while the city may or may not have proceeded without it, it was the RDN's component to do it. We really were anxious to move it out of the Prideaux Street location. It's not the best solution, and I thought this site would suit well for it.
Yeah, now don't get me wrong. I'm not opposed to a transit hub going down there. I'm opposed to the process and the way that it's being done. Why the rush to do this? Why the MOU? Why such a rush? As I say, the only reason I can see is to influence that committee. That committee may come up with ideas that say, no, we shouldn't have a transit hub down there. Then what? You've already entered into an MOU with the RDN. We've seen how MOUs with Landsville have worked around water. They eventually lead to the city doing what they agreed to in the
But
MOU.
I think maybe staff can put a little light on this, because this has been something that's been in the works for an awful long time. And Mr. Swaby, maybe you can expand on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. This MOU is much more than just a piece of paper indicating that they might have an opportunity to develop a transit exchange. The whole purpose of purchasing the Wilcox Yard was done jointly with the RDN for the purposes of primarily siting a transit hub in this location. Absolutely, there's a planning process on, and the planning process knows that it's flexible to look at alternative locations, but whether or not the transit exchange goes on this property is not in question. The regional district has cited it, is contributing to the property, and it's going to go somewhere on the property.
So essentially this does influence the concept plan. And what you're saying bears the question also, why was this done in camera? I mean, why the secrecy on doing the MOU if it was something that had been in the planning process for ages? Why do it
I don't think
camera?
it was done in camera. I think that there was a public release on it quite some time ago that the RDN and the city were jointly going to be acquiring the Wilcox Yard. So this goes back. Go ahead. You were going to expand? Yeah.
Maybe for Mr. Fuller's benefit as well, both the purchase of the Wilcox Yard as well as the terms of reference for the planning study all reference that the transit exchange would be on the property. So this has been known from the very beginning. It's been in the forefront since.
Can we, when you say the beginning, can you give me a date? I mean, when did this first start, or when was it made public that the RDN and the city were proposing this transportation hub?
Your Worship, I apologize, I don't have a date in front of me, but at the time that we were proposing to purchase it, the very first news release that we put out indicated that it was a joint purchase for this very reason. And I might add that there are, of course, as we move along in the planning process, there's going to be lots of opportunity for input, but there's other uses that may come along that the planning committee that's been struck will have to consider as part of how it plans this out, because it's not a static property. It has current uses by many users on the property who want to either remain or other people want to come in. So this is going to be an ongoing process. The owners, though, are the RDN and the city.
Mr. Fuller, I think it was last fall, I believe, that this was made public.
Okay, the newspaper states, an MOU is not a formal contract, but lays out a common course for two local governments. Okay, it's not a formal contract. Then it states, it was separately approved by both organizations during in-camera sessions. Is the newspaper lying about this?
I don't think they're lying, but I think this information has been a public document for a long time.
Your Worship, certainly the terms of any land deal are an in-camera item, and both the board and council wanted to come forward with an agreement once it was ratified in terms of an MOU. How it ends up at the end of the day absolutely will depend on how much land they take, where the land's located, and what the appraised value of the property is. So it definitely is an in-camera issue up until the time that the deal is struck.
And that's what I have to question is I don't believe it should have been done in camera. It's not a contract. It's not laying out terms of sale or anything such as that. My guess is it was under Section 91 of the Charter, which states may go in camera, and just was put in there as a matter of routine. The other couple of questions I have on this is, and I actually know the answers to these now because I've talked to some people today, was the committee aware of this MOU going through? And they said, I've talked to a couple of people, they said no, they weren't aware. And then I happened to look at, I got some stuff emailed to me today, and in the draft revised South Down Waterfront Initiative terms of reference, way into the page there is a mention of the RDN is participating in the purchase of a portion of the plan area to establish a transit exchange. So now they know, or they will tomorrow, because that draft document is dated for the 25th of June. And the last question, which I also know the answer to because I've chatted with Snuneymuxw, is were Snuneymuxw consulted with regards to this sale of the property to the RDN?
It's important not to use the word consultant, I think. The First Nations is on the committee. We're aware of the purchase before we actually jointly made an offer to purchase the land. So they've been actively understanding what the city has been and the RDN have been proposing for a long period of time.
Well, my understanding is they aren't aware that the city was actually planning a sale of a portion of that property to the RDN. So anyway, it just astounds me that so much is done in secrecy in this city. And yes, there was stuff out about the RDN maybe purchasing this, that, and the other thing, and then all of a sudden we find out there is a memorandum of understanding. When will that memorandum of understanding be published?
It's available now. I believe it's going to be.
It's on the website, I believe, right now.
I tried to find it on the website. I couldn't find it.
If it isn't, it will
Will be shortly.
Very shortly.
Will be shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Your Worship,
Yeah,
got a request to speak
Jeff, go ahead.
to the delegation. Mr. Fuller, I brought up a December 13th, 2012 press release from the City of Nanaimo that's on the website, on the Wilcox property. Fourth paragraph down, it says, a joint interest between the city and the RDN involves reserving a portion of the new land for a future multimodal transit exchange to effectively serve the downtown, nearby islands, and region as a whole. With an agreed purchase price of $3.4 million to CP, the city would sell a section of the land to RDN for the purpose of building the desired bus terminal. Quote, the RDN is pleased to be working closely with the city on this important project, said RDN Chairperson Joe Stanhope. Quote, this central site is an excellent location for a transit exchange and will contribute to the effective operation of the overall regional transit system. December 13th.
That's good. Then, again, that bears the question, why was this done in camera?
That was prior to the purchase, Mr. Fuller.
The memorandum of understanding that was brought up in the newspaper was done in camera. Why?
Well,
If all of this was up front and above board, why?
Yeah, but it's part of the thing, and I think you know, Mr. Fuller, that the 3 Ls, again, it's part of land, and so while we were negotiating with CP, we really weren't able to discuss it. And you may disagree, and I appreciate that, but there was confidentiality until we were able to conclude the
Well,
deal with them.
CP has a right-of-way in perpetuity, so
And
yes,
C-SPAN as well.
that would be certainly a different
They were also the owners
discussion.
we were buying it from.
Yeah, and that would certainly be a different discussion than a discussion with the RDN about this. So,
Okay, good, sir. Thank you. Now, we'll move into administration and 7A, the appointment of a deputy corporate officer. The purpose is to obtain council approval for the appointment of deputy corporate officer for the City of Nanaimo and the establishment of the order in which those duties are performed, and the staff recommendation.
Did you do your mayor's report? Was that?
Yes, that was the mayor's report, was the announcement of the. Could you get the names of both these two people for me, please? And I'll start again. The purpose is to obtain council approval for the appointment of deputy corporate officer for the City of Nanaimo and the establishment of the order in which those duties are performed. Staff recommendation, the motion that Council 1 appoint Ms. Kirsten King, acting manager of legislative services, deputy corporate officer for a period effective upon appointment up to September 20, 2013, to fulfill the duties set out in the section 148 of the Community Charter, and 2, establish the order in which the deputy corporate officers perform the duties in the absence of a corporate officer as follows. 1, Ms. Kirsten King, acting manager of legislative services. 2, Mr. Ian Howard, acting general manager of corporate services. And 3, Mr. Brian Clans, the director of finance.
Move staff's recommendation, both 1 and 2.
Moved, and discussion. I see none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Community Safety and Development, item 8A, Development Permit DP 000844 at 1917 Northfield Road. Purpose to obtain council authorization to renew the development permit for a 130-bed dementia care facility located at 1917 Northfield Road with 2 variances.
I move that council issue development permit number DP 000844 at 1917 Northfield Road to renew development permit number DP 00718, including the following variances. Front yard setback, a required front yard setback variance of 1.5 meters, no change from the previous application, and building height, a maximum allowed building height variance of 2 meters, no change from the previous application.
Moved and seconded. That's as perhaps some of the people watching at home as well as here in the audience recognize that as the Travelers Lodge. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Worship. It's good to see that this project's moving forward, and I know that previously on the old variance, the community was concerned about the traffic going through in the end of the cul-de-sac, and I believe it's now still only emergency access with knockdown bollards, so there'll be no through property onto the smaller, I think it's Brianna Drive in there or something. So I'm glad to see that, and the neighborhood was concerned about that. Thank you.
Good. Okay, it's been moved and
I
seconded.
support the application.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into the rezoning application RA 000311 at 141 Westwood Road. The purpose is to present an application to rezone the property located at 141 Westwood Road from rural resource AR1 zone to single dwelling residential small lot R2 zone in order to permit a 26-lot subdivision. Staff recommendation, the motion that council receive for information the report pertaining to rezoning application number RA 000311 at 141 Westwood Road. So if somebody would like to move that. Move. Seconder. Discussion. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I think it would be appropriate if we could staff, maybe Mr. Tucker, to explain a little bit about the division between ALR, the Agricultural Land Reserve, and this particular development, and maybe you could expand a little bit on the sensitive issue of the Gary Oaks that are involved as well, please.
Yes, Your Worship. The property to the south of the subject property is within the Agricultural Land Reserve, and the Agricultural Land Commission requires that a buffer be placed on a property that abuts the ALR to act as a buffer between the agricultural uses and the residential uses. In this case, there's a buffer strip of 11 meters that is being set aside along that southerly property line, and also within that 11 meters is 5.5 meters in which there will be no removal of vegetation protected by covenant. The second part of the question was with regards to the Gary Oaks in this area. The city arborist inspected the site along with the biologist for the applicant. They're somewhat, to say, traumatized Gary Oaks, but the Gary Oaks are largely protected in a park dedication that has been agreed to by the applicant. Those that do have to be removed will be replaced with Gary Oaks saplings.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. This has also, will this require a road closure for the part of the lots? And one of my concerns with it, or not a concern, is there's a road closure dedication there on the page 79 in figure 1, right by figure 1.
The road closure bylaw hasn't proceeded because the applicant is waiting to see the outcome of the rezoning application. That has to go to public hearing, and I believe he'll proceed with the partial road closure if third reading is granted by council, but he's not proceeded with that at this point.
Okay, and then the road closure will just, at that point, wrap into the new RS small lot zone then?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And a little further question now. Above that on Westwood Road, at the intersection of Westwood and East Wellington, I know there's been some concerns of traffic flow from the Northfield end, or the Northfield Park, down towards East Wellington Road for our connections. Are we looking at improvements of the East Wellington-Westwood Lake intersection? I think Mr. Swaby's aware of my concerns with that road connection at Northfield, or at East Wellington and Westwood.
Well, Your Worship, there's certainly a proposal that we have that would connect East Wellington all the way out to Northfield Road to relieve the traffic pressure, and that's been in an application for quite some time, an industrial application. That wouldn't be right at that intersection. However, there would be improvements made here in a minor way. However, you have to protect this for an interchange probably in the long-term future.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking at a road dedication here and probably some improvements in that one because it's important. I really like the protection, and Mr. Toth has done a good job on I think the tree management plan on this property, and I support that. But I'm wondering about the future of the traffic on this road. Thank you.
Good point. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the detailed report. The Toth Engineering have been out on the site, the environmentalists, to identify the trees that will be preserved. Will they be there when excavation takes place, or will one of our city urban forestry planners be there to ensure the trees are saved as identified?
Mr. Tucker?
The intent is to fence the area, and in one of the diagrams shows the area of fencing, which will be to put up around the trees prior to the development taking place. So there'll be the fencing put in ahead of time. Some of the trees will have to come down because they're in the road alignments and in the building envelopes, but there will be protection as shown in the development or in the proposed plan.
Good, thank you. And the rare flower species as well? Quite a number of rare flower species. I was astounded.
The area of park space that is in this proposal, having worked through it with the environmental consultant, is larger than originally proposed, and it's to preserve more of the meadow, the Gary Oak Meadow, in this location.
That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. I'm pleased to see that through the rezoning, the amenity contribution by the proponent is offering $26,000 to the Affordable Housing Legacy Fund. And as well, through the subdivision, they're contributing an extra 1,451 square meters to the 5% that they have to make a 2,145 square meter park. So that's it's nice to see. Thanks.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes. Moving into the bylaw portion of it now, the motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.042 RA 311 to amend bylaw number 4500 to rezone the property at 141 Westwood Road from rural resource AR1 to single dwelling residential small lot R2 in order to facilitate a residential subdivision pass first reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And motion that the rezoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.042 pass second reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into C, riparian setback variance policy review interim report. The purpose is to provide council with an interim report on the riparian setback variance policy review, and the staff recommendation that a motion that council receive for information the interim report regarding that. Move the motion. Second. Moved and seconded. Councillor Patchy.
Just a quick comment, Your Worship. I can't tell you how pleased I am that what started with what is obviously a wise motion by Councillor Brennan way back when has resulted into this interim report. We have struggled for many years with riparian setback issues, and it is really nice to see that we are, what I think, on the right track. Certainly with the endorsement of ACES, the Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability, and the Development Process Review Board. I think we've done very well, and I'm looking forward to the end result, so I'm very much in support of this.
Thank you very much. I just would echo those results, and I see Councillor Brennan has a note too. And really, I want to thank staff because there's a huge amount of work put into the preparation of this document, and it does, as Councillor Patchy pointed out, solve a lot of the issues we were having with riparian setbacks, because it was a challenge most of us had struggled with for quite some time. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I just would like to add that I noticed that the ombudsman is, or ombudsperson is initiating an investigation and a report on the riparian area setbacks and just on the regulation itself in the province. So the fact that we have on our own initiated this review and starting to put into place a lot of policy that expands what we are obligated by law to do. This protects much more and gives us far more information than we would under ordinary circumstances. So I think we're ahead of the curve on this. So glad to see that the ombudsperson is looking at it, but we were too.
Good for you. Well, thank you for bringing it forward. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Your Worship. Something along the same lines as Councillor Brennan, but I was going to ask basically what takes precedence, provincial or the ombudsman or a person or our municipal review, or do they work together, or what?
Yeah. Your Worship, the ombudsperson, I believe, is in a role of making recommendations only.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Well, thank you. Page 93 of the report and the agenda, the top box shows up that about 12% of our permits in 2012 were riparian or watercourse adjusted. 11 was around the same, and it's changing more. I think we're closing in on. We did do a great job way back in the 90s on our 15-meter setback and our 30-meter setbacks, sort of leading edge then. And I think as Councillor Brennan brought this forward, it is leading edge. It's been great. One of the key things that come out of it from the development community review, the development process, was pre-applications are extremely important, and they weren't mandatory before, and we're starting to look at the mandatory. So people will actually come in, sit with the city, go over the watercourse, the DPAs for watercourse or the environmentally sensitive areas, and start to identifying what needs to be done. So the development community was very pro this and thought it's a good first step, that everyone should get in there first and early and talk to the city and look at the things. And getting a qualified environmental professional and clarifying what their positions are, I think, has been an important one in this process. So it was a good one. The meeting we had with all of the biologists and the people was an excellent session. I can't think of that. I think it was 30-something people attended from all sort of assets of the community, and it was excellent. So it's a good start.
Good. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only caution that I would have on this is that this all started out of the riparian areas, and that's relative to streams, and particularly fish-bearing streams. And now we're getting into marshes and wetlands and Gary oak trees and flowers and all kinds of things. And we've got to be really, really careful that when somebody comes and starts developing a piece of property, that we're not turning it into every single lot in Nanaimo is going to end up being reviewed under some sort of very extensive environmental review policy, so that every lot becomes reviewable under this program. So as long as the developers know going in, early in, what their requirements are, and there's no surprises along the way, goalposts move, opinions change, et cetera, new input from this QEP and then that QEP and so on and so forth, as long as it doesn't significantly antagonize what should be bona fide development of normal lands, I can support it. But we've got to be really, really careful.
Yeah. This would, of course, impact those properties that are involved with the riparian rights and setbacks only, so that if it was in the middle of the shopping or subdivision, it might not apply. But it's a valid point. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into D, proposed electoral area A, official community plan amendment for the city Main Street Village Plan. The purpose is to obtain council support for the proposed electoral area A, official community plan amended bylaw referral to the Cedar Main Street Village Plan. Staff recommendation that the motion be made that council support the proposed regional district of Nanaimo electoral area A, official community plan amendment bylaw number 162001 2013 for the Cedar Main Street Village Plan.
Move staff's recommendation.
Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The social development, we're into item E, social development funding to sex trade workers safety initiative. The purpose is to obtain council approval to allocate social development funds in support of Nanaimo Women's Resource Center's efforts to develop a peer-based responsive initiative for street-level sex trade workers in Nanaimo. Move the motion. Second. Moved and seconded. Councillor Batchy.
Again, Your Worship, something really important is happening here as a result of the BC Missing Women Commission of Inquiry of former Attorney General Wally Opal. Councillor Brennan and I think Councillor Johnstone have sat in on some of these cohort groups of not-for-profits who are very concerned about what can and what does happen to women in the sex trade. And I can tell you that a certain procedure has been put in place as well. And the last time we attended one of these cohort sessions, we were told that 3 women who could have been missing over a certain period of time were found in quick succession. And so this is what the whole thing is about. $7,000 is very little to spend on this really important issue, and I just hope that everybody supports it. Thank you.
Okay, I might just quickly say that I certainly support it as well, and I think, as the motion will say, it's approved. It's a one-time grant of $7,000, which is a very small amount, and it's coming out of the casino revenue, and I don't think a better source could be found for casino revenues than supporting this group. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I wanted to just make some remarks about how we started down this path, and that is that we anticipated that the former Attorney General Wally Opal would be making recommendations about how municipalities have an obligation to and can help protect the lives of women who are in extremely dangerous work, and that this is just a tiny little baby step, but it's something that we did anticipate. The RCMP was really leading this, and we fell into step behind them, and there was a lot of adjustments that had to be made because of, quite frankly, some mistrust that's, going to necessarily be there between the women who are working the street and the RCMP and the agencies that assist them. So the RCMP really needs to take a lot of credit for this, as do the organizations that sat down and said, yeah, we need to deal with this, but we need to deal with it in a way that protects, not just protects the women, but protects their right to some privacy and to knowing that the information that they share is not going to be used in any way to harm them. So I'm really, really proud of this, although I do acknowledge it is a fraction of what's needed, but we need to get started on this road, and we need to begin doing that by taking responsibility, and I think this is one of the things we're doing.
I might just make a quick comment here, too, and thank you, Councillor Brennan. You're absolutely right. But I would also want to mention that I think the bike unit in particular of the RCMP, and that's under the direction of Corporal Dave LaBerge, has done an outstanding job.
Absolutely.
They're on the street all the time. They're talking to people. They're supportive. They're inclusive, and they're very professional. And I credit and kudos to the RCMP. Certainly that particular unit that's done an incredible job. Councillor Kipp.
I can't add much more. The Volunteers of Police, SPAC, and SAFER, Social Planning, Advisory, and Development. This also has the provision for opportunities to exit the sex trade, and that's an interesting one with it. And what Councillor Brennan and all our councillors are talking about is the girls involved in sex trade can actually be safer. They can phone in. They have the ability to contact, and if someone's missing in that, so it makes it a lot better for them. And our police have done a good job in the street with helping them, and it's interesting. And the ability here for the provision of opportunities, and I agree, this is is not enough money to help. We need to probably fund more of this. Thanks. I support it.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into 91 Chapel Street, tender for demolition. The purpose is to obtain council authorization with respect to tendering the demolition of an unsafe building at 91 Chapel Street. And those in the audience that have been here for a while remember that as the old Fiesta Theater there, and the roof has fallen in on 2 different occasions. Not the same roof twice, but more of it deteriorated and it's fallen down, and it's a huge concern for all of us, and it's resulted in a partial closure of some of the streets as a result, and those businesses that are affected by it are hurting. So we're anxious to try to move ahead with this thing. The purpose is to obtain council authorization with respect to tendering for the demolition of the unsafe building 91 Commercial Street. The motion that council authorize staff to proceed with a tender for the demolition and removal of the building at 91 Chapel Street. Move. Councillor McKay, did you have something on it?
Question.
Questions? Yep. So you moved and you seconded it? Yep. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. So this question is to staff. So this is a preemptive, if you will, to in the event that the owners elect not to take on this work. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Do we have any indication that they won't take on this work?
We've met with the owner's representative and their engineer on site. They have not made any commitments in that regard, so we're taking this step to go to tender, and then we'll be back to council in 2 weeks, and we may have more to report to you then about the owner's intent.
Thank you. Supplemental? And how do we recover?
The cost of the demolition would be put on the taxes for this site if they did not pay it, and then eventually it would go to a tax sale if, again, they did not pay it, or there is a potential purchaser out there who may pay off that cost. But at the end of a 3-year period, if the taxes are still unpaid, then it would go to tax sale.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, if I may. When will the determination be made if the building will be made structurally sound or if it will indeed be demolished in its entirety?
The process is underway right now in which the owner's engineer is looking at the ways to stabilize the building. We've spoken with their engineer, and the city also has an engineer looking at it. We don't believe stabilization will serve the long-term purpose because the building is to a point where it's going to have to be demolished anyway. But it's still up to the discretion of the owner if they wish to stabilize it within this 30-day period. They have not undertaken any steps at this time to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Moving into item G, unauthorized suite at 4984 Ney Drive. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the unauthorized suite located at 4984 Ney Drive. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to that unauthorized suite at 4984 Ney Drive? Seeing none, then if the staff recommendation is there, if someone would like to move that.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to property maintenance for the properties listed below. And the staff recommendation that council pass a motion pursuant to the Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704, to direct the owners of the following properties to remove the materials listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. And I think all 4 are still on the list to the best of our knowledge. The first property is 762 Townsite Road. Discarded household garbage, household items, appliances, household furniture, wood items, metal frames, plastic items, and miscellaneous debris. As pictured before you, are there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 762 Townsite Road? The second property is 530 Nova Street. Discarded construction material, blackberry bushes, truck bed, and miscellaneous debris. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 530 Nova Street? The third property is 3755 Sandra Road, discarded branches, household garbage, construction materials, and miscellaneous debris. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 3755 Sandra Road? And the final property is 206 5th Street, Blackberries encroaching on neighboring property. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 206 5th Street? And there we have it. So would somebody like to move the staff recommend moved and seconded? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into liquor license amendment application LA 000090 for permanent change to liquor license, Mount Benson Branch 256, the Legion. The purpose is to advise council of a liquor license amendment application in advance of staff requesting comments from adjacent property owners and occupants. The staff recommendation is that council, a motion be passed to receive for information the report pertaining to the liquor license amendment LA 0090 for a permanent change in the liquor license at the Mount Benson Branch 256 Legion. And I believe that refers to a deck or patio. Is that correct on that? What's your pleasure? Would someone like to move that one? Move. Second? Notice. Oh, Councillor Batchy.
Thank you, Worship. To staff, if I may. I'm having trouble with the map that you provided us on page 112. I'm trying to determine where this outside patio is going to be in conjunction with the Quarterway School, which is across the street.
You're on?
Yep. Your Worship, it's on the opposite side of the building from Quarterway School, so it won't be visible from Quarterway. It's on the north side of the building.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
No, thank you.
Okay, so I think it's been moved and seconded. It has been moved and seconded. Any question on that? No further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we're going down into number 1, Port Place, condition of the Port Way Viaduct. The purpose is to update council on the recent emergency repair work that was completed on the wooden trestle located at 1 Port Drive, and to identify funding requirements and next steps in relation to the trestle. Staff recommendation in the motion that council, 1, refer the issue of sharing the cost of replacement and maintenance of the trestle to the next Port Liaison Committee meeting, and 2, direct staff to prepare options for replacement of the wooden trestle in 2016 and report back to council with those findings. Moved. Second. Moved and seconded, was it? Councillor Kipp.
Your Worship, I agree with the cost replacement, and the first part referred to the issue of sharing costs. I understand that. The second one, direct staff to prepare options for the replacement of the wooden trestle. I'd prefer to have that read options for access, because we may find that the trestle may in fact not be the best methodology. We may have a flat road. So I'd prefer if we could change that to options for replacement, options for access.
Yes, staff agree with Councillor Kipp, Your Worship.
Okay, so that'll be a friendly amendment then?
There are options for access. Does the wooden trestle have to be in there? Or?
And the mover and seconder agree?
Yeah, however we can write that.
For access.
Wordsmith it. Thank you.
Could I ask one of those startled people on staff to read that back to us? Go ahead, Mr. Kinney.
For clarification, you would like to change the word, or recommendation 2, to direct staff to prepare options for access to 1 Port Drive and report back to council with those findings?
Should it read direct staff to prepare options for access or replacement of the wooden trestle? Would that satisfy? And or?
It's fine either way.
Yeah.
Fine either way.
Okay.
Mover and seconder fine other way too. So, okay, that's the. Oh, Councillor Greaves, right?
Thank you, Worship. I echo Councillor Kipp's suggestion. I was thinking that myself, that, if we don't have to use that wooden trestle, or we can just get rid of it totally and use a road, that would be way better anyway, but we'll see what staff comes back with in options.
The big challenge, of course...
Walking platform, community garden.
Oh, please. The big issue, of course, is the existing leases on the property and the rail and so on. So it does create a challenge, but the motion obviously will look at these different things. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we're over to corporate services number 9, and this is to do with the DNBIA, and so with the business improvement area, and because I own commercial property in the downtown area, and deem that I could be considered in conflict, I will absent myself, and Councillor Greaves will step forward. Councillor Greaves, thank you very much. I'm just going to put my feet up, donut. What you call me?
You don't need it, donut. Thank you, Worship. We're on number 9, corporate services. 9A, business improvement area number 1, BIA 1, bylaw 2013, number 7168. Business improvement area number 2, BIA 2, bylaw 2013, number 7169. And the purpose is to provide the results of the petition against process on council initiative for bylaws numbers 7168 and 7169. I see we have two delegations. Come forward, Mr. Taylor, and you have 10 minutes. I'll tell you when your 9 minutes are up. I'll give you a minute to finish.
Doesn't take any more than 6 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay.
Good evening, Acting Mayor Greaves, Councillors, Jim Taylor from Nanaimo. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the Nanaimo Ratepayers Association, of which I am the Vice President. Nanaimo Ratepayers Association is a recently organized group of people that hopes to be a voice for a new special interest group in Nanaimo. The special interest group in Nanaimo is the average Nanaimo taxpayer. First of all, I'd like to say that the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association is a fine organization. It's got many talented, dedicated people that are working diligently to improve the business climate in the downtown Nanaimo. The Nanaimo Ratepayers Association takes no issue with the organization itself, but only the fact that it receives funding from the general Nanaimo taxpayer. Downtown Nanaimo most certainly looks greatly improved over the past few years, and you would expect it to look a whole lot better after our $72 million renovation. The streets are inviting, and many shops offer mall-weary shoppers a much-needed alternative to the mall and big-box retail experience. That said, it's still a mere shadow of the vibrant commercial street that greeted me when I first moved here back in 1970. Back then, it truly was Commercial Street. The only mall that was to the north of us at that time was called Northbrook, and that's on the site of Brooks Landing now. It had one small junior department store and a small grocery store and a few handful of small businesses. Back then, if you wanted to shop, downtown Nanaimo was not only the place to shop, it was the only place to shop. And we didn't seem to have any trouble with the parking, but we didn't have any trouble with walking back then either. Commercial Street also gets special attention from the city in the form of flowering baskets and the cost of maintenance and all the rest of it. We have the city runs sidewalk sweepers that keep the sidewalks all nice and spiffy and shiny and clean. Pretty soon we're going to have the most expensive toilet in all of Nanaimo installed in downtown Nanaimo. Thank you. No doubt the city is spending lots of money attempting to breathe life back into the downtown Nanaimo. The planning that has led to this decay would be a subject we could have a discussion about later. Nanaimo Ratepayers Association is opposed to the general taxpayer dollar being directed towards what is basically an advertising and promotional organization aimed at bringing business into the downtown core. This seems yet another example of City Hall meddling in the marketplace. The downtown core arguably has seen millions and millions of tax dollars poured into it in less than the last decade. And while the entire downtown has certainly been transformed in appearance, its success as a business center still seems to be facing challenges. This is after more than 10 years of taxpayer subsidies being paid to the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association or a similar organization that operated under a different name. By now, the businesses in the downtown core should certainly be able to attract and retain business without a $1 million handout from the general taxpayer. An example of being able to attract and retain business is clearly seen at the Port Place Mall, which is also located downtown and doesn't seem to face any of the struggles attracting customers, even throughout their ongoing renewal process, their ongoing renovations. They still have customers coming and going, so I wonder why that might be. If the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association needs funding that equals twice the amount that the levies produce, then the levy should simply be doubled. It's no more complicated than that. But the general Nanaimo taxpayer should not be forced to support one business sector in Nanaimo, which is arguably to the detriment of other businesses. Typically, when this council has been asked to hold the line on taxes, a predictable response is, just tell us what form of public safety you would like to see put into jeopardy, and we'll see if we can cut your taxes. It's as if that the only way that we can get a handle on our tax expenditures is by putting public safety into jeopardy. Well, this is an example of how you could save the Nanaimo taxpayers $250,000 a year without reducing police or fire service levels. Of course, in the overall scheme of things, $250,000 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but the old adage of watching the pennies and let the dollars take care of themselves, a little bit of old-fashioned wisdom we might be able to put to use. Of course, the overall, as a matter of fact, if you could find 2 more such expenditures that you could save another $250,000, you could reduce this year's tax increase by 1%. There's no real justification for dipping into the general taxpayer's pocket to fund a sales and promotions office for the downtown business sector. Some recent and pending downtown planning seems to work at cross purposes to the goals of the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association. For example, Port Place Mall seems to be designed to simply attract and hold shoppers as opposed to presenting a free and inviting traffic flow that would encourage people to come back over to Commercial Street and enjoy Commercial Street. The entire area from Diana Crowell Plaza down on this side of the street down through to Terminal Avenue could possibly be used as a poster child for how to design an area where people locally don't want to come downtown to shop. There's no real draw between Diana Plaza and Terminal Avenue. I understand now we've got, I think VHA is locating another office in the Terminal Park area, and at a time we've got about 30% vacancy in the downtown offices. And now we're also planning another 117,000 square feet, possibly, strip mall on the site of the old Medill property, which is going to give any new possible retailers coming to Nanaimo another reason just not locate in downtown Nanaimo. So there's many other things that the city could do to truly help revitalize the downtown core that wouldn't require another $1 million or $1.25 million coming from the tax-worried Nanaimo taxpayer. So the Nanaimo Ratepayers Association urges this council to cancel any taxpayer funding of the DNBIA effective this year. I thank you for listening, and I think I have a few minutes left.
You certainly do.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Mr. Bullen?
I'll apologize for any overlap. Before you, Acting Mayor Greaves and councilors, before you this evening are 2 bylaws, BIA Bylaw 213, number 7168, and BIA Bylaw 213, number 7169, which each contain within them 2 distinct issues. 1, the concurrence of the city to enable appropriate accounting and procedural matters with the province to allow for the collection of funds from the owners of businesses in 2 defined business improvement areas, or BIAs, of the city for the purposes of business improvements in those areas over a period of 5 years. And secondly, grants from general ratepayers to those 2 BIAs during that period in the amount of $1,159,732.63. I applaud the first as an exercise in self-support. I decry the second as a form of extorted charity to the unneedy, or at least those no needier than many other groups or individuals in this city, and you have spoken of some of at least one of those this evening. There is no doubt that the DNBIA has carried out some laudable activities. There is little doubt that most, if not all of these activities would have, as they have in every other city with a BIA in British Columbia, proceeded without the ratepayer grant. There has to be some reason why no other city in this province, all under the same provincial BIA legislation, has adopted the matching grant philosophy used in Nanaimo, despite the opportunity of doing so over many years. Are all these cities failing? There may have been a time when taxpayer assistance was needed. It is now past. The crutch has now become a fixture. Despite the fact that we now have the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, which is funded by general taxpayers to the tune of $1.4 million a year. We provide nearly $6 million per year in funding to PONC, otherwise known as VICC. We have tax exemptions and we have heritage grants. The downtown has been showered in funds from general taxpayers for a number of years. It's time to look at other objectives. I realize that under the circumstances, it would be extremely difficult to go cold turkey on the grant funding to the DNBIA. Withdrawal after 10 years of grants would be very hard, nor would it allow for appropriate transition planning. I would propose, therefore, that you table these bylaws tonight in order to consider gradual reductions in grant funding, which would close out that source by the end of the upcoming 5-year period, if not earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. I don't see any questions. Thank you. Council, the report is on page 116, and I'd like a motion for staff's recommendation, and please read it out. Go ahead,
to move staff's recommendation that Council receive the results of the local area service on Council initiative, subject to petition against process for Business Improvement Area Number 1, BIA 1, Bylaw 2013, Number 7168, and Business Improvement Area Number 2, BIA 2, Bylaw 2013, Number 7169, as included in this report.
I have a seconder. Seconder, Councillor Brennan. Questions? Discussion? Councillor Kippis.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me because I understand the concepts, but I do also from the speaker's points of view. I know later in our agenda we're going to talk about swimming pool fee increases, and the Parks and Rec is looking at raising fees, and we're trying to scrape up about 50 grand a year out of all of our fee increases. And when you hear of our NEDC, I think they have a $486,000 surplus this year from the 2012 money, and they say things are rolling around. And it is a tough one. We are the only city in BC that funds DNBIA. Now, I like part of it because many communities fund them and have it in line items. Public Works does work down there, Parks and Rec does work, and so you don't really see it in the budget. So I appreciate this in our budget. But I also understood originally years ago it was supposed to really be some seed funding to get this going. And I have a bit of concern. And when we're constantly upping pool prices, we talk about here, we hear charity to the needy. I'm concerned with it, and of course I'm always on the tack of trying to save money, so I'm having a concern with supporting it. The other side I don't like is I do not like those reverse petitions. I really don't like them, so just a point.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification. The bylaws we're looking at here tonight are for the collection of the tax.
That's correct.
As opposed to the matching grant.
Yes, the bylaw is only covering the funds that are collected through the taxation. Okay. The bylaw calls it a grant. That's language that the province uses in the issuance of the collected funds back to the DNBIA.
Okay.
Councillor Padgey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I like some of the things that Mr. Taylor and the New Nanaimo Ratepayers Association talk about, and I like some of the stuff that Mr. Boland talks about. I think they're both being kind of unfair to the DNBIA, whom I think are being shortchanged tonight for the tremendous amount of work that they are doing. I can't tell you how often in the last 5 years I have asked about Diana Krall Plaza, and it's still as empty as it was then. but I know they're looking at it, and they're looking at a really difficult place to liven up. And there are restrictions on it. There's a parkade below it. There's only so many things you can do on it. And I wish you could tell Mr. Taylor that lovely new public toilet that is coming is going to liven things up, but only at night, I'm afraid. But the long and the short of it is, I think credit due where it should be due. And I am a long way from yanking the money from the DNBA at this point. And that's what I wanted to say.
Oops, Councillor Brennan, you were next, but I missed it. You can give Councillor Brennan the mic.
Do you want me to? Okay, it's working. I just want to remind us all that this is a motion to receive the results.
Right. Okay. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you. I'm cognizant of that reminder. Thank you, Diane. But I also just want to speak to what was happening tonight. My goodness, just a couple of years ago, we received the national award for the best street in Canada. Now, when you go down our streets at night, they're well lit and sparkling. There's people on the street. There's people milling around. The safety factor is back. I think that over the course of the past 10 years since I've been here and seeing this taking place, a lot has been achieved, and I would very much be opposed to seeing it discontinued. So.
All right, moved and second. No more debate? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws. The Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area Number 1, BIA 1, Bylaw 2013, number 7168 be adopted. Have a motion? Seconder? Did you second? Okay. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried. And the second one? So moved. And seconder? Councillor Paggi? Discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried. You can call the mayor back in.
So we are at 9B, Purchasing Power Delegation Bylaw. Purpose to delegate, thank you very much for doing that, Councillor Greaves, outstanding job. Purpose to delegate purchasing authority is set out in the purchasing policy. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to Purchasing Power Delegation Bylaw 2013 number 7175, and there's some bylaws to follow. So I'd like to move and second. Move and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, I have a number of issues, but I think it is some language issues, of course, that came out, and a few other things. I can support the bylaw now, but I'd like to sit down with staff and go over a couple of my issues, whether they don't mind, and possibly maybe a revision could come forward later. So I'd just like to note that.
Sure, this is just a report we're receiving. Yep. Good point. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now we go into the bylaw motion, but I think it still can be revised to Councillor Kipp if there's some issues you want to deal with. Sorry? The bylaw then, one motion that Purchasing Power Delegation Bylaw 2013 number 7175, a bylaw to delegate purchasing authority, pass first reading.
So moved.
Moved. Second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Two, a motion that Purchasing Power Delegation Bylaw 2013 number 7175 pass second reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, the motion that Purchasing Power Delegation Bylaw 2013 number 775 pass third reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into bylaw to amend the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Bylaw 2006 number 7124. And the purpose is to amend the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Bylaw 2006 number 7024 therefore, in order to remain consistent with the current legislation related to the designation and duties of the head and coordinator, staff recommendation is that Council receive for information the report pertaining to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Amendment Bylaw 2013, number 7024.02. Someone like to move that? Moved and seconded? And seconded, moved and seconded. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's bylaws attended, and that is bylaw section under C1, a motion that the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Amendment Bylaw 2013, number 7024.02, to amend bylaw number 7024 to remain consistent with current legislation related to the designation and duties of the head and the coordinator, pass first reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And 2, motion that the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Amendment Bylaw 2013, number 7024.02, pass second reading. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, the 3rd motion that Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Amendment Bylaw 2013, number 7024.02, pass third reading. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into municipal security issuing resolution, the water treatment plant purpose is to obtain council authorization to carry out the first phase of the long-term borrowing required to fund construction of the water treatment plant. And the staff recommendation is that council approve a motion borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority of British Columbia as part of the 2013 fall borrowing session, $13.3 million as authorized through the water treatment plant loan authorization bylaw 2011, number 7127, a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of up to $22.5 million for the construction of a water treatment plant, and that the Regional District of Nanaimo be requested to consent to the borrowing over a 20-year term and include the borrowing in the security issuing bylaw. Moved. Second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Community services. Item 10A, feasibility study results and the recommendations for the Nanaimo Art Gallery at 150 Commercial Street, which is also the Center for the Arts Building. And this is to be introduced by Councillor Diana Johnston, Chair, Nanaimo Parks and Recreation and Culture Commission. Councillor Johnston.
Your Worship. I'd like to make the recommendation that Council support in principle of the phased development plan.
But we're just going to put it on the motion on the floor, and then we'll get the delegation here. Do you want to do it first? Okay.
Delegation first.
So we have the first one is Mr. Ian Nymeth, President of the Board of Directors, and then followed by Ms. Julie Bevan, unless you're doing it consecutively, the Executive Artistic Director, Nanaimo Art Gallery. Mr. Nymeth, are you going to do it together?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Mayor and Council, Your Worship, members of staff, and all of our wonderful supporters of the public here. I wish to thank you for letting us stand before you tonight and to bring this, to talk about this motion that we would love you to support. As you can see, we have a fair amount of support from the various arts organizations in Nanaimo. They're all sitting here, and they are very interested to see what goes on here tonight. As you know, the vision for the new Nanaimo Art Gallery has developed in 2009, and our strategic plan developed in 2011. The Nanaimo Art Gallery has created a very exciting proposal to amalgamate services and eventually expand at 150 Commercial Street, a city-owned building in the heart of downtown, the Downtown Arts District. And the gallery is presently located there, as you know. Over the years, we have in fact done extensive analysis of this building. The actual physical plant, the structures, the gallery's current and future requirements for the space. We have done a fair amount of work on this. And we have consulted other consultants, and we have a very good report from one of our consultants who helped us with this. And we have consulted with a lot of stakeholders in our community and in the arts organizations and public. As a result of all of that, of course, the outcome of that is that we feel, and so do many other people, that the building and the site at 150 Commercial Street is eminently suitable for what we are doing. We are trying to amalgamate both locations, the location at the Campus Gallery and the Downtown Art Gallery, to create an outstanding public art gallery in the heart of downtown. This particular initiative will be, if you support this, it'll be an absolute incredible signal to the rest of the arts community and to the Nanaimo community that you are in favor of the arts, and we hope that you would do exactly that. I'd like to introduce Julie Bevan, who will tell you all about the details of how we intend to do this and a timeline, etc., etc., etc. So, Julie.
Why a public art gallery? What's our purpose? Nanaimo Art Gallery aims to inspire and challenge through art. It's an accessible place of enlightenment, enjoyment, and education, and it's a focal point for the visual arts community. Our purpose is to exhibit, collect, preserve, and interpret works of art to enrich the lives of the people who live here and those who come to visit us. The gallery establishes an artistic and cultural heritage for Nanaimo, our province, and our country. Our programs include exhibitions that may be national or international in scope, but always suggest connections to our unique place on Vancouver Island. Our art education offerings for both children and adults develop technical as well as critical thinking skills and aim to foster confidence in individual creativity and a lifelong love of art. The gallery's collection of art is a valuable resource, one that I'm happy to report is growing. In the last weeks, the gallery has received gifts of artwork by BC artists valued at over $27,000 from donors in Courtenay and North Vancouver. Community outreach includes Festival of Banners, now in its 26th year, and temporary exhibitions of outdoor art in partnership with the city. We also organize art sales and rental and the gallery shop, which contributes to the livelihood of artists in our area. How do we get all of this work done with such a small team of staff and volunteers? Nanaimo Art Gallery is good at collaboration. A few of the organizations we've partnered with this year include VIU, the Architectural Institute of BC, Burnaby Art Gallery, the Boys and Girls Club, the Federation of Canadian Artists, TD, BMO, Thrifty Foods, RBC, the Grand Hotel, Coastal Community Credit Union, and Nanaimo Design Nerds. The impact that we have in the community is significant, and I'm pleased to say that we're doing very well compared to other art museums in the region. Last year, we presented 17 exhibition projects, involved more than 200 artists through programs, benefited from over 2,500 volunteer hours, paid over $45,000 to artists via our shop and art sales and rental. We engaged some 12,500 students through Artists in the Schools and welcomed more than 23,000 visitors to our exhibitions. How do we fund this work? On the screen is a chart that breaks it down. 56% of our income comes from earned and private streams. This includes fundraisers, memberships, revenue from social enterprise endeavors like our education programs, our shop and art sales and rental. And private refers to corporate sponsorship. At present, 25% of our operating revenue comes from the province, 15.8% from the municipality, and 7% from federal programs. Currently, admission to both gallery locations is free, and we're open to the public 6 days a week. It's an important part of our story that barriers to access are low. The gallery truly is a welcoming and accessible public space. As you know, the plan to amalgamate gallery services at one location has been in the works for years. After considering other options, including the old museum building, our focus shifted to 150 Commercial. We analyzed the building's structures and spaces and took a close look at our current space usage at two locations and what we anticipate for the future. We developed a preliminary program, floor plans for the two existing levels. We sought preliminary costs for upgrades and renovations, investigated the possibility of expansion, and invited stakeholders to weigh in. We've met with many organizations and individuals to share our idea, build support and excitement, and explore possibilities for collaboration. We've had conversations with the city, with VIU, DNBIA, Economic Development, the Chamber of Commerce, Port Theatre, Nanaimo Museum, Nanaimo Arts Council, BC Arts Council. We've met the current tenants on the lower floor at 150 Commercial, including Theatre One, Crimson Coast, the Archives, the Symphony, and we've met with Centre for the Arts Nanaimo, who has operated the building since it was purchased by the city and designated for arts and culture. As part of our process, the gallery engaged Anthony Bonney and David Jensen as consultants to test our assumptions. We tasked them with reviewing the work that we'd done to date, and their report states, we feel a Commercial Street location is appropriate for a central public art gallery because of its proximity to the library, museum, theatre, conference centre, hotels, the new commercial development at Port Place, the waterfront, and the highway. They conclude that the size of a new facility meets the requirements of an art gallery serving a city and a region of this size, and that the site is well suited for the additional area to meet our future vision in terms of our plan for expansion. We also invited a critique to help us determine next steps and identify areas that needed further consideration. They made recommendations, including that we establish a phased approach and undertake a holistic business plan that looks at the project over 5 to 10 years. Some of the work that they've recommended we've undertaken, some is in process, and some are other steps, priorities as we move forward. We've developed a 3-phase plan for development between 2014 and 2020 and have attached preliminary timelines to it. Phase 1, which we can achieve in 2014, includes the following: that the gallery and city enter into a management agreement for 150 Commercial. The agreement would be similar to that which the city has with the Port Theatre and the museum. We renovate areas on the main floor to enhance the lobby entrance and create a dedicated education space for our programs in the unit formerly occupied by Mystic. Moving our education programs into this space will allow for increased capacity, thereby expanding the gallery's impact in the community and driving revenue. As part of Phase 1, we'll develop detailed plans that consider a capital campaign, community engagement, the transition from campus. This planning will ensure that organizational growth and facility development are fully integrated. We'll work collaboratively with the city and with tenants at 150 Commercial to help them find suitable new homes. Phase 2 is projected for 2016-2017, and at this stage, the gallery takes over the lower floor of the building and renovates both to achieve excellent exhibition space, education facilities, secure environmentally controlled areas for the collection, offices, meeting areas, etc., and gallery services are amalgamated under one roof. Phase 3, 2020, involves new construction at the Wharf Street side of the building to fully realize our vision. This new facility will connect to the existing building, meet Category A standards, house exhibition space to display temporary exhibitions and works from our collection. Possibilities include classroom and meeting space, studio space for artists and residents, a small lecture theater, a rooftop patio, a cafe. I've got 2 images of Phase 2 floor plans. I won't go into detail, but it's been established that the gallery can make use of the building without significant structural upheaval.
Okay, your 10 minutes is up, but you can wrap it up fairly soon. That'd be great.
Yeah. We're confident that our plan for development at 150 Commercial connects to community priorities. It links to the city's strategic plan and commitment to cultural vitality as a pillar of sustainability. It connects to successful cities. It's anticipated to be recommended in the forthcoming cultural plan. Developing a facility for the gallery was identified as a priority by the community through stakeholder engagement. Our plan builds on the success of Centre for the Arts Nanaimo, reinvigorates an existing city-owned asset, and continues with the work of downtown revitalization. It's realistic and viable in the current economic climate. It will make our operation more efficient, will increase the capacity of the gallery to serve the community, and guarantee our organizational sustainability. And finally, it will provide a community icon and destination for residents and visitors and support objectives of infrastructure that's already been developed downtown, including the conference center and the cruise ship terminal. That concludes my remarks. On behalf of our board, staff, volunteers, and members, thank you for your consideration.
Okay, we've got a couple questions for you, Dashway. One question I had was that on the pie chart that you presented earlier, it showed that the municipal portion was some 15.8%. And I wondered, is that in the form of a rent consideration, or was that an outright grant that you received?
At the moment,
what made up that 15%?
Yeah, at the moment we do pay rent for the downtown facility. So that 15.8% is a grant that we receive annually from the city in the range of $62,000.
Okay. That's good. Well, I just want to add that I totally support it. I think it's a great project, and I think we're going to be able to consolidate the campus gallery downtown. It's a city-owned building. I think it serves the needs of a lot of people, and I think art and culture are important to the community. I have to say that because the chair of Arts and Culture, the Parks and Rec, is sitting with me. But I think it's a great fit for the city, and I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you for your presentation. And now, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Ms. Bevan, very much, and thank you, Mr. Hamath. I have a question which may be kind of difficult for you to answer, but when I read the staff report, and we talk about the 3 phases, 1, 2, and 3, when I get to the portion that deals with 2 and 3, it says these 2 phases would be dependent on a number of issues, including future funding consideration and availability. You know, in the 5 years that I've been here, we have sometimes approved things in principle that got us kind of stuck afterwards. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit and give me at least an inkling of what we might be looking at funding-wise for Phase 2 and Phase 3?
Sure. In terms that we've have costs, as you know, established for Phase 1, and we know that it's achievable in 2014. In terms of Phase 2 and 3, we know that we have a lot of work to do before we move through those phases, including, as you know, relocating and finding proper homes for the existing tenants. What we do know is that through Phase 1, in particular, by getting that education space up and running, that'll be a source of revenue and will help the gallery get ramped up to take on Phase 2. We have identified a variety of different sources of funding to take on the Phase 2 and Phase 3 project, including the Cultural Spaces Grant through Canadian Heritage, different foundation grants that we're actively seeking, not only for Phase 2, but for Phase 1 and our ongoing operations. And one thing that the gallery has been quite good at is securing private sponsorship and building partnerships, and that's certainly something that we're looking at in order to move those phases forward.
Okay. 1 or 2 follow-ups, please. Could you explain to us what the gallery would be able to do once it becomes a Class A gallery that it cannot do now?
One thing that we'll be able to do when we're under one roof, we'll be operating much more efficiently in terms of delivering all of our programs. As we move forward and develop a climate-controlled space that meets those Category A standards, we'll be able to bring in all kinds of traveling exhibitions from across the country. That's definitely one objective. Another one is that we'll be able to attract donations, like the recent donation of artwork that we received, and be able to guarantee that those will be on exhibition and that we'll be able to care for them properly over the long term.
Okay. One final question, Your Worship, to staff, if I may. One of the current tenants in the building, that being the Nanaimo Community Archives, is going to be displaced one way or the other. And I have a great concern about that. It's an amazingly important institution where our history is lodged and taken care of, and it's not just a place where you can move like a store from A to B. This is involved and has to be done with a great amount of care. Would you be able to elaborate, Mr. Harding, a little bit as to how that might be handled?
Right, Your Worship, through Councillor Patchy, if this proceeded and the art gallery did take over the building in 2014. Phase 2, then, between the Phase 1 and Phase 2, it gives us time to work with those tenants on a variety of components. So the archives would be a more difficult one to find a home for. We do believe there's options out there. If this all went through, then we'd start working with the Archive Society and looking for other possible locations within the city area.
And then very finally, Your Worship, I want to thank Ms. Bevan for the incredibly important work she does on my cultural committee. It's absolutely fabulous to have you, and it's a good place to thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to compliment Ms. Bevan. You add a great energy to the organization, and you're just extremely passionate about the work you do. I've got a couple of questions. Looking at your revenue stream that you're hoping to get, or pardon me, the funding you're hoping to get, can you tell me why you don't charge admission?
At the moment, we don't charge admission because we have 2 separate locations and because of some of the challenges we have in terms of marketing and communicating and promoting our art museum as an iconic destination. There is some, that falls into the reason that we need to be under one roof, because we have identity issues in terms of the community. We have explored the idea of charging admission. The museum is a really good example of a place that has started charging a $2 admission since it moved into the conference center building, and their attendance has gone up. So it's definitely something that we will explore in terms of an amalgamated scenario. At the moment, we do have a suggested donation, and we invite visitors to leave donations. But if we were to look at admission, it would be in keeping, in something in line with what the museum does.
Thank you. Supplemental?
Yeah, sure.
You're suggesting, can you expand a little bit on the new home possibilities for the other tenants?
I'm probably not the best one to speak to that.
I think that'd be a staff question.
I thought you were looking for new homes for the other tenants.
Our idea is that we will work collaboratively with the city and with the tenants who are in the building in terms of exploring options, in terms of the timelines, and I think that's something that we'll be working on with staff and those partners. But at this point, I'm not in a position to answer that question, I don't think.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Julie. You mentioned that 16% of your funding comes from the municipality. Could you please tell me what the provincial average is?
In terms of our research, part of the work that we've done is getting a good look at other galleries across the community, across the province, like-sized communities. And what our research has shown is that the provincial average is somewhere between 24 and 40%. Many of those have different governance structures, and some are in fact run completely by the city.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. I think I'll save my comments until we pass the recommendation or move the recommendation.
We vote on the recommendation.
Or move it.
No bias there. Okay. That looks like the end of the question. There's a staff 7. Is there a comment from staff here? I'm not sure who staff 7 is, but okay. Oh, okay. That's fine. No, it lights up on here, but it doesn't identify who it was. And Councillor Johnson, do you have something more to add?
No, I'd just like to move the recommendation if there's no further questions of the delegation.
To receive the delegation.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And I just want to say that I just want to say, stop that, Miss. I just want to say, but I just want to compliment the art group on having the spokesman. Ian Nymouth, of course, is a very eloquent speaker naturally, but he can't hold a candle to Miss Bevan when it comes to emotion and detail. So, and with all respect, of course, Ian. We are.
I'm going to move the recommendation.
On the recommendation? You're going to move that?
Yes, Your Worship. I'd like to bring forward the following recommendation with a great deal of pleasure, that Council support in principle of the phased development plan of the Nanaimo Art Gallery for 150 Commercial Street, and to direct staff to develop a draft management agreement for 150 Commercial Street between the City of Nanaimo and the Nanaimo Art Gallery for Council's review and consideration, and that would include funding implications, Your Worship. And I'd like to speak to the
Okay, you might just also mention that a copy of the Nanaimo Art Gallery proposal referred to in the staff staff report is available for viewing on the City of Nanaimo website, www.nanaimo.ca/assets.what. Oh my God, it's a long one, isn't it? New PFDS NAG, proposal, PFD. So,
Yes.
Councillor.
Your Worship.
There was a seconder. So do we have, you were going to
I'm going to
for
speak
it,
to
and
it,
then
yes.
we have 2 other speakers?
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you for your presentation, Julie and Ian, and for the presence of all of the cultural people here tonight. There's 4 pillars in the community that form the basis of a strong arts and cultural presence, Your Worship. And currently we have our wonderful award-winning Port Theatre, represented here tonight by Bruce Holliday. We have an amazing and dynamic museum, represented by manager Debbie Truman. We have an iconic library in the Diana Krall Plaza, right in the downtown core. We're forming this fantastic nucleus of cultural amenities that bring people into our community, that create a presence for tourism and for economic development. And I just think that this is one of the most exciting proposals that's come forward. An amazing plan, a phased plan that has been well thought out and presented this evening. I'd also, in my remarks, Your Worship, like to thank Kamala Tang, who has brought the Center for the Arts to what it is today, and thank her for her endorsement of this proposal. I think it's very gracious of you, and thank you for being one of the team members that's going to bring this to its inevitable happening. So thank you, all of you. Thank you for coming.
Good. I can only assume that Ms. Bevan had some part to play in all that enthusiasm you were showing, but...
She's contagious, Your Worship.
Contagious.
When she arrived in Nanaimo, she arrived with both feet moving very fast, and we're very fortunate to have her here.
Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the 3rd time I've heard this presentation, so I'm finally getting it. I've got these 2 professional business plans that we've been presented, and I agree with Councillor Johnston. She stole some of my thunder, but I like the idea of it being downtown, amalgamated with the VIU, and the theater and the library and the VICC and the museum. It's a perfect spot for it. And every time I have problems trying to decide what to do about funding and so on and so forth, I usually go back to the strategic plan that we just developed a little while ago. We developed it, so we're going to use it. And the first thing is under vision and quality lifestyle center of Vancouver Island, and then culture. And as Councillor Johnston mentioned, 4 pillars: cultural vitality. And then under that, we have the 6 strategic priorities, community building partnerships. So I kind of agree with that. Now, we were sent a lot of emails from a lot of people in support, which was nice to see, because we get a lot of emails of people not in support of other things. So it makes me happy to read those emails. But if you believe this email, and you'll have to look it up yourself, I just took it verbatim, there's 2,468 arts, culture, heritage jobs in this region. That's 2,105 forestry jobs. So the arts and culture and heritage beats them out. And then the 2,440 construction jobs. Now this is from Stats Canada, 2007, and I don't know who sent this to me. So if you're out there, thank you. There's a lot of jobs to be had in this arts, culture, and heritage. And having said all of that, I'm in full support of the art gallery and the business plan and the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too support Class A gallery in our community. I support the business plan in principle. The challenge I have is, how are we going to pay for it? We do this over and over and over again. We come up with these great ideas, And the only way that we seem to come up with paying for them is tax increases. So I've got some real concerns, and I'd like to ask Mr. Harding, going into our next budget next year, if I'm correct, we've got $30,000 for the funding for on an annual basis and a $50,000 upfront. That would be coming from our 2014 budget, yet to be debated?
That's correct. It would be for the 2014 budget. The capital component, we have some options that we can bring to council for a variety of options of how to fund the capital portion, which is the $50,000. The operating would also have to be within our operating budget.
So this would be in addition to all of the other higher service levels you've already requested for Parks and Rec for next year?
We're not aware of any higher service levels we've already requested, Your Worship.
Were there not pool repairs to be made and so on and so forth for next year?
I'm sure there are, but they're within the existing service level.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bevan, for your presentation as well. I just wanted to first read a statement from the 2008 cultural plan before I continue with my statement. And it says, a strong civic art gallery needs to be a priority in strategy discussions as a key building block in Nanaimo's cultural infrastructure. And it's nice to actually see a document that was done in 2008, which is actually starting to see fruition now in 2013. It's great to see that this plan has actually been well thought out before coming to council. A lot of the time, groups come to us and just ask us for money and say, give us money to do this. And I think that some of my colleagues can easily think of the groups that have come to us having not done as much groundwork as the Nanaimo Art Gallery has done, and I'm happy to see that there's 2,500 volunteer hours as well that is put into this organization. In Michigan State, for example, for every $1 that's invested in arts and culture, they see a $51 return in economic activity. In Canada, it's $54.6 billion industry for arts and culture. And so I think this is a great step for Nanaimo, and that we're moving forward with trying to increase the cultural vibrancy within our community, but we're not trying to do it all at once, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the arts community that has come forward and asking about the phased-in approach of this new art, an expanded art gallery. And as I said earlier, it's taken a lot of thoughtful approaches, and they're not saying let's just go and do everything at once, but willing to wait and make sure that they do it correctly. So I am 100% behind supporting the motion on the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I want to thank the Art Gallery and the committee and all the individuals who've worked so hard on this. I worked with you in 2008. I was wholly committed then and continue to be committed to this. Everybody has talked about what a great foundation it is for a city to have a great gallery. So I'm not going to go there because I know that. But I do want to talk about that it's an economic driver, and we know this. And in fact, I see Mr. Pulley here tonight, and way back in early 2000, the Economic Development Group. For the first time for me, I understood what an economic driver culture was. So here we are 13 or so years down the road, and we're really embracing that, and our Economic Development Corporation has underlined that for us and stressed that for us. So it culminates tonight, and here we are deciding to support this gallery in principle, a gallery that is going to be on our main street, which is, I think, one of the best things about it. And I know we kind of did a survey, and we missed the fact that we were sitting on a great spot. So just well done, and thank you. And one thing I want to add is that I'm not a big fan of having admission to galleries and to museums. I can remember being in Glasgow in 1995, and every single museum, every single public gallery was free. And that's part of the economic driver. That's part of attracting people to your city, is showing how much you value not just culture and arts, but how much you value your own culture and arts so much that you invite the community and everyone else to come in and have a look at what you've got and what you can do. So I'm just really happy that this is happening. I too have some concerns about the archives because they have really specialized needs, but I have no doubt that our staff and the gallery and CANS will work together to find a good spot for all the tenants, but in particular I have concerns about the archives, so way to go.
Good. Councillor Johnstone, sorry.
Just briefly, Your Worship, much has been said, but just to emphasize, and I believe Ms. Bevan-Check touched on it, that once we achieve the Category A status, that will leverage other levels of funding from Canadian Heritage and the federal and provincial governments. So I think that's an important thing to remember, that once we achieve our Category A status, then there will be other levels of funding forthcoming to support us.
Okay, that's all the speakers, and I think there's a motion on the floor now. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving. Item B is disbanding the Nanaimo Athletic Commission, and that's to be introduced by Councillor Jim Kipp, the chair of the Nanaimo Athletic Commission. The purpose is to obtain council approval to disband the Nanaimo Athletic Commission and repeal the Nanaimo Athletic Commission bylaw 2006 number 7019 and any amendments thereto. Councillor Kipp.
Yes, Your Worship. I'd like to move that the council make a motion to disband the Athletic Commission. Previously, a number of different communities in British Columbia have had commissions and sanctioned professional fights. Over the last couple of years, it's been mandated by the province and turning over to Provincial Athletic Commission because of the advent of mixed martial arts and the difference, and of course the Federal Government Act that's coming through to recognize combat sports. So I just would like to mention too that in it that now all fights in British Columbia in the professional ranks will be managed by the provincial government, and I hope our webpage will reflect the new contact in it. So I move that council
that the Nanaimo
Athletic Commission bylaw 2006 number 7019 and all amendments thereto be repealed.
Is there moved and seconded? Any further discussion? I just might say I want to thank Councillor Kipp, who has been on that commission for quite some time, and any of the other members that participated in it too, because it was a great point. A lot of work went into it. So, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the bylaw?
Your Worship, a follow-up on that if I can?
Yep.
I would like to recognize people that have done. Mr. Cliff McNabb used to be on the commission years ago. Joe Martin, Mr. Ken Punt. One of the current commissioners, Ed Garner, has served for, I think, about 30 years. Currently is Ted Greaves and Bill McKay on with me. Brent Munya, who was previously a staff person who has donated time now as a commission member. And our commission has led a lot of places in this. It's typical of Nanaimo. We have done this for a number of years and helped the provincial government set up the new athletic commission. So accolades. Oh, and Merv Unger is another one.
Unger,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I would have got heck for that one.
Would you ever?
Minutes here on the email. Merv done one. Bruce Davis.
There's quite a number.
And I am going to ask council over the next little while for a little recognition for some of the people that have served for a lot of time. So thank you.
Okay, and Ms. King, the bylaw the motion's been made, but the bylaw not yet?
The motion was to repeal the bylaw, Your Worship.
So now we're going to Oh, so we've actually finished the section bylaw 1 then is done.
That's correct.
Moved and seconded, and we've got a vote on it, so we can move ahead to the subdivision item. Thank you, Councillor Kipp. C, subdivision control bylaw 1989, number 3260, proposed amendments to the Manual of Engineering Standards and Specifications, MOESS. The purpose is to provide council with notice that the amendments to the MOESS are scheduled for presentation at the regular council meeting of 2013, July 8th.
I move that council receive for information the report regarding subdivision control 1989, number 3260, proposed amendments to the Manual of Engineering Standards and Specifications.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. I want to just acknowledge and thank Susan for, is Susan still here? Maybe not, but for all her work and the engineering people that put all this together. It was a lot of work, and I just want to thank them for their efforts. Susan Clift worked very hard on this one. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Beach Drive Storm Drainage Outfall Tender Award under D, purpose to obtain council authorization to award the Beach Drive Storm Drainage Outfall Contract.
That council award the Beach Drive Storm Drainage Outfall Contract to the low tender Winley Contracting 2010 Ltd. for the tender price of $308,212.82, excluding GST.
Is there a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes of the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting held 2013, March 07. Staff recommendation that the motion the council receive for information the minutes of the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting held that date. Would you like to move that? And is there a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? All those in favor? No. Opposed? Hello? Oh. Okay, now we'll move into the bylaws with no accompanying report. 11A, motion that the official community plan amendment bylaw 2013, number 6500.019, the Old City neighborhood concept plan of bylaw 6500 to add sub-area 2A to permit multiple family residential development within a portion of sub-area 2 be adopted. Moved. Seconder. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 2, that the official community plan amendment bylaw 2013, number 6500.020 to amend the bylaw 6500 to redesignate lands from urban reserve to neighborhood and parks and open space to permit a residential development be adopted. So moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion that Parks, Recreation, and Culture Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2013, number 7073.06, to amend Schedule B, Fees and Rental Policy 2013, September 1 to 2015, September 31 of Bylaw 7073 be adopted. So moved. Moved. Seconder? Seconder? Moved. Councillor Kipp, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can't support this currently. We looked at saying that we're within ranges of cost of living. I heard yesterday our cost of living is about 0.7%. We talked about 3 and 4% average on these. I'm still concerned we're trying to raise $50,000 by upping these fees, and this is about the use of our facilities, the people, the social implications of it, so I just can't support it. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate what Councillor Kipp says, and we're very cognizant of the fact that money has to be raised one way or another. I have an example here of Nanaimo Aquatic Center operating expenses. They were $3.8 million. If you add debt to that, 0.7, it comes to $4.5 million. That's what it costs to operate that Nanaimo Aquatic Center every year. The revenue we get from that is $1.6 million. So that leaves us $2 million in the red that someone has to pay for. Now, so the fees only cover 35% of the cost of operating Nanaimo Aquatic Center. Somebody has to pay, so either it's going to be the taxpayers pay for it through their taxes, or user pay. Now, the user pay thing is very difficult. It's subjective. It's some of these things that we have now, for example, the LEAP program. People have to go in and prove that they need, they don't have the ability to pay for these facilities. So through the LEAP program, they get 50 visits free and 4 visits through programs. We have the 80 over. They're free. That's contentious. I know that. We had a long discussion about the 80-year-over people getting in free, and there's reasons why we kept it in. And it's also tough to take it out once you put it in. This was only been in the last 3 years. We let the grade 5s and 6s in free. We have rec passes that are much reduced, 3, 6, 9, or 3, 6, and 12-month rec passes. So without going on and on and on, the thing is, we've got to find revenue somehow, because we are letting people use the facilities, by the way, are paid by taxpayers, and that don't have the ability to pay. How do we get the money back? How do we operate these facilities? So, I mean, I support this this bylaw. I think that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Councillor Kipp, did you have something else?
Yeah, just a quick rebuttal on my view on it. These are the things we subsidize. I would like the same rational value on the theaters that we subsidize, and how many people go through our pool. And when you talk about all the free people, the amount of people that use our pool in comparison to the subsidy here, I would suggest what goes through the pool in 1 or 2 months is what goes through our theater in the whole year at the Port Theatre. I would suggest what goes through our arenas that we subsidize is far more than, say, do a lot of other things in the community. So if we look at just pay and user pay, we won't have pools, we won't have theaters, we won't have a lot of those social indicators in our community. And so when a community's health is dependent on our pool, and that's why we have 4 different temperatures in that pool, because it's a health issue. We designed it specifically for those health purposes. So to restrict it by continually trying to make it pay for itself, and of course, I mean, there's always efficiencies. I don't know how much of this is tacked in administration costs and things that we always have for everything. And when I see 3.8 million and 1.6 comes from it, and it's only a debt servicing cost of about, $700K, it sounds like a pretty efficient thing for what it does for the community. So continually raising the prices to gain 50,000 when we just talked about 200,000 to the tax-paying businesses downtown. We talk about probably a few $1 million for the art center here. That's my concern with it. I don't care if it was, like you said, $12 or $6 to hit the paper. To me, it's getting too expensive for people to take their kids there. It's just getting too expensive. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Councillor Greaves, for your excellent summation of why we felt it necessary to increase the fees. Over and above the fees, we offer many programs within the City of Nanaimo, and I wanted to just touch on some of them. The free swimming for all the school children in grades 5 and 6, the wonderful new concept of the Swim to Survive in partnership with the School District 68 that we will be initiating over the next. So there are opportunities. The LEAP program is very well used, and I think that we are going to be looking when we review the budget next year for other cost-saving measures. But this has been a process that's been well thought out for several months now, and discussed at the Recreation Committee level and at the Commission level. And I encourage Council support.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first thing I'd like to ask is when was the last increase to fees?
There's been some gradual over the years. Every 3 years we come with a report. Some of those fees have gone up each year. Some have stayed the same for many years.
So there has in fact then been an increase every year?
Not in every category. Some years we have 0%. Some will go up 2 or 3% over the third year. It really depends on what areas we have. This pilot really sees most of the changes in Oliver Woods, where we were relatively low compared to what we thought when we opened it. And we can go through some of the changes of what it is on what it actually means on some of those changes, if you'd like.
That's okay.
Safe areas for swimming.
That's okay. I just wondered whether there had been a continual increase, like year after year, if the prices on everything had been rising.
I'd say in general, every bylaw we've seen a percentage increase over those bylaw changes.
So is that
because we only do it once every 3 years.
That's what I was going to say. So that's once every 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I get the question from the taxpayer or from the user, and I always prefer the taxpayer because it's just a more fair system. But it's not necessarily fair when you're using property taxes as the generator of tax dollars. It's much more fair when you're using income as the generator of the tax system. So it's hard to make an either-or argument on that basis, because the value of a person's house really has no real connection with their income in many cases. So we have to look at it being a shared responsibility, I think. So, and people want the services. I mean, the Parks and Rec there's a really heavy demand for those services. So I kind of set some standards, and I said this last time. I set some sort of key things that I wanted to see happen, and one was I wanted to see that students in post-secondary get a student rate just like students in the public system, and that hadn't been the case, and with these new changes that is the case. A student is a student, and that's fair. That makes sense to me. The 80-year-olds, I mean, that's just one of those things that we always, not just us here at council, but everybody talks about making your community healthier, and certainly providing activities for people who are over 80, so that they can use the pool and they can use Oliver Woods and they can do those things. That just makes your community healthier. So it's another one of those standards that I wanted to see hit, and we hit it. We deal, maybe we don't do it all the way, but we do address issues of poverty. We do address issues of people and families that live in poverty. So I think that when you set some sort of milestones that you want met in these kinds of things, if you can see that you're meeting them, if you're clicking them off, then it makes sense to support the whole thing rather than to choose one thing out and say it didn't meet my needs here, so no. So overall, I can support this, and thank you, Councillor Greaves, for setting out the financial pieces of it for us so that we have a better understanding, and yeah, I can support this.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I'm one of those guys that's all about, ROI and business decisions and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's not about ROI. When I was at the FCM Sustainability Conference back in February, I met Gil Penalosa from the 80 Cities organization. And he was telling me about one community that came up to him, and that fellow was very proud about how they got the largest return on cost return on their parks or their rec facilities at 65%. And his response to them is, "What do you want, a medal?" And the fellow seems surprised, and he says, "Look," he says, "the taxpayers already paid for these items, so why don't you charge a rate that the community, based on their income levels, can afford?" I want to congratulate Parks and Rec for the initiative, the sponsorship initiative that we're looking at for this fall and the rollout. There's some huge opportunities in commercial sponsorships of some of these facilities. Tabor, Alberta has got a facility not unlike our Centennial Fields, where they're seeing between $300,000 and $400,000 a year in commercial sponsorships. Those could be some of those new revenue sources some of my colleagues talked about relative to keeping the fees low and some new revenue streams. So I would just hope that we could hold off these increases until next year when we've explored some of those possibilities, inventoried our Parks and Rec facilities for some of those commercial opportunity sponsorships, and so we can keep these levels down low as opposed to constantly increasing them in the same old fashion. So I can't support it.
Okay, thank you. I just have a question for staff. I don't know whether it's for Mr. Kenning or for you, Mr. Harding, but the costs are somewhat fixed, and so if we don't show any kind of an increase, modest as it may be, on the rates as suggested and in the staff recommendation, will that not just simply come out of the taxpayer's pocket?
Your Worship, I think there's basically three options: fund it from user rates, fund it from taxation, or reduce services. I certainly recognize, as Councillor McKay said, that there may be options around sponsorship. However, I think that that's something that Council would want to look at closely in terms of, is it a philosophy that you want to do? There's nothing mutually exclusive about the fee increases and future sponsorships. They can do both.
You know, I guess the thing is that it's really whether it's user pay or taxpayer pay. It seems to be that way, because I don't really think there's an appetite to start cutting services and reducing pool times and those issues. So it's a difficult one. I think we all want to try to mitigate tax increases wherever we can. But I think, to my way of thinking, it's fair in that it doesn't address all the issues. But I think a combination of user pay and taxpayer pay is fair, and for that reason, I'll support it. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one last thing. If we were to forego the new sign in front of Bevan this year, that would more than almost double support this increase, would it not?
Mr. Harding, do you recall the cost of that sign?
The budget for the sign is $100,000. I don't believe it's going to cost that much, but that's for the sign. It's out of our capital budget. So if you're looking at this, is $50,000 over each year with it, but it's also a part of keeping up with those increases. So we can hold increases here for however many years council wants. At some point, we're going to be further behind in what our fees are in relation to what kind of balance the community wants in regards to fees and people paying our user fees versus 100% taxation. Okay, that answers.
Okay, we're dealing with 11C, Parks, Recreation, Culture Regulation Amendment Bylaw, and so on, for the fees and rental policy, and we'll call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? We have Councillor McKay, Councillor Anderson, and Councillor Kipp opposed. Balance of council in favour. The motion passes. You agree, Ms. King? Thank you. Moving into other business. And we have Councillor Brennan to request reconsideration of Council Resolution 1081 as per Section 33 of the Council Procedure Bylaw 2007 number 7060. And I think at this point, do you want us to move the repeal motion first and then hear the delegation?
Your Worship, it would be appropriate to have a motion to reconsider the motion.
And I believe Councillor Brennan has made that. Do you want to read it then? Okay. Second. Moved and seconded. Okay, no, it's been seconded. All those in favor of reconsideration? Opposed? Councillor McKay opposed. I think it's balance of council is in favor. So it's now on for reconsideration. And before we deal with that, we'll get the delegations in. And the first delegation is Mr. Shaw. I'm sorry, from Shaw Cable is Mr. Bray. Sorry, Jeff Bray. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Council, Your Worship, and Council for allowing me to be here. And I have with me Doug Steele, who is our Technical Operations Manager out of the Nanaimo office. So he's sort of the senior fellow of the 500-plus employees that work out in Nanaimo, and he's also the one that may be able to address any more technical questions that the Council may have. I have with me a slide deck that I'm going to go through pretty quickly. I understand that Council's considered this once before, has got a staff report. So really, I'm hoping to go through this very quickly and then just really be available for any questions that may come up, Your Worship, with respect to the Shaw proposal. And essentially, what Shaw has opted to do, instead of building out a cellular phone network, is to build out a Wi-Fi network to really provide a mobile experience for our home internet customers. And it's really a value add for our customers. So we're not charging our customers for this service. It's really something that is available to them so that they can take their devices, be in that third place, be it in parks and recreation facilities, in malls. One of our big partners are Jiffy Lubes. People sitting there waiting for the oil to be changed can use the internet for free. And it's really to provide that experience. And it's also providing what we refer to as carrier-grade Wi-Fi. So it's not providing the sort of amenity Wi-Fi that people may have experienced at various coffee shops. It's really carrier-grade Wi-Fi, so it's really allowing people to do amazing things for free on their devices. And actually, it was interesting. We had a look just a day or two ago at the usage here in Nanaimo, and at any given point in time, on any given day, we have about 3,000 customers that are making use of the Wi-Fi in Nanaimo, running about 14,000 sessions, so doing about 14,000 things a day just on the free Wi-Fi. We're in over 300 businesses now in Nanaimo, so we have a significant presence already. The business community really loves the fact that we're providing free Wi-Fi to our customers, and we're not charging the businesses anything in order to be able to provide that to their customers. So we're having tremendous success in Nanaimo and indeed throughout Western Canada. Another thing that I'd just like to point out, that over half of the households in Nanaimo are Shaw customers, so this is an amenity that they get to benefit. So a majority of homeowners get to use this service in Nanaimo. In fact, they get to use it in Victoria, they can use it in Calgary, they can use it in Winnipeg. Wherever it's available as Shaw customers, they do get to use it. The other thing that we've heard from our customers is almost everybody in the family has one of these devices, and they all pay a data plan on these devices. What families are finding now that we have so many of these devices out in the community is that families can knock one or two of those data plans off, saving $40, $50, $60, $70 a month of after-tax dollars that they're not sending off to Toronto or Montreal, that then becomes available for spending in the local community. So we're finding that $700, $800 a year some families are saving simply because they have this service that's available to them. Shaw will probably by the end of this calendar year have spent $500,000 in Nanaimo installing these services. If we were to partner with the city, we estimate it'd be another $100,000 investment in order to provide that service on and in municipal infrastructure. So it's a significant endeavor, and it's something that we know our customers are certainly valuing. But beyond that, we're knowing that, like any piece of infrastructure, when it's built, some of the new opportunities that come along won't really be discovered in the same way as the internet was really something that was new. And once it was built, people found all sorts of extraordinary ways of using it. Just this last week, we've been watching the terrible events in Calgary and the flooding, and what Shaw was able to do with the thousands of access points we already have there was we opened those access points up to everyone to allow for communications, especially for the businesses and the shop owners that were struggling with trying to contact employees, get information about emergency services. So because it's a full network, we were able to open that up for everyone just to aid in the communications that was happening in Calgary. As you can see by this schematic, we're already well ensconced in Nanaimo in the business community. Small shops, larger chains have all really taken us up. I was just having a bite of supper in the Coast next door, and we're in the lobby of the Coast Hotel next door, which means that I can use the internet without any cost on my data plan. And certainly, we have heard, and I know that last week there was discussions around the health issues. One of the reasons why Shaw chose Wi-Fi as opposed to wireless is because of the completely low radio frequency emissions that come from the access points for Wi-Fi as opposed to cellular antennas, having to build big monopoles and place them on rooftops. Essentially, our outdoor access point, which would be, up on a pole somewhere or on a utility shed somewhere, emits about the same RF energy as a baby monitor, a cordless phone, or the barcode scanner at Safeway. So it's very, very low. It uses about the same power as a 40-watt light bulb. So we just found that it was, for a lot of those reasons, also an excellent choice for us to go as opposed to maybe looking at the cellular model. We are, as I said, deploying right across Western Canada. So over the next couple of years, we will have deployed tens of thousands of access points between Sault Ste. Marie and Port Alberni. One of our strategies was also to make sure that we go to small, medium, large cities at the same time, so that this experience is there for people, whether they're in small communities as well as large, whereas some of the cell companies start with where everybody is and eventually provide the service in smaller communities. We will be in communities right across Vancouver Island, from Campbell River right down to Souk, pretty much all at the same time. So we did approach the city, and we are looking to have an access agreement that would simply allow us to extend that network and the equipment onto or in municipal infrastructure, so streetlight poles, rec centers, pools, arenas, rinks. A couple of the things that I'd like to sort of point out to that. The first is that we're not asking for any exclusivity. It's a simple commercial arrangement. So if the city wanted to use another Wi-Fi provider for some other service, that would be no problem. If another provider at some point came along and said, we'd like to do something with the city, there'd be no issue with respect to that. We probably are the only company that will do something on this side, but in the future, something else could come along as well. And also, unlike the cellular companies, our spectrum is unlicensed. Anybody can do Wi-Fi. That's why you see Wi-Fi in all sorts of businesses. So, in fact, there is the ability for other people to come along and provide that service one way or the other, whereas cellular is licensed spectrum, so only a certain number of companies can even offer cellular, whether they lease a rooftop or not from somebody. We've certainly done a lot of agreements on Vancouver Island already, and we're doing, we've done Winnipeg. Edmonton Council just approved the proposal. We certainly have offered two main proponents, or two main pillars of how we would partner with the city. One is a straight commercial lease arrangement, no different than leasing of any other space. We would pay for the access points that are placed on or in municipal infrastructure. The other option that we did put forward, though, was from any access point that's on or in a municipal facility, we would open it up for everybody. So there'd be no charge, and it'd be the same service. It'd be the same service whether you're a Shaw customer or not. One of the significant differences is a Shaw customer is logged into the network wherever they go. They don't have to do anything. A non-Shaw customer, if they walked into Bevan or somewhere, would actually have to log in to get the free service. But otherwise, it would be the exact same speeds and service for both. So we're happy to engage in either one of those discussions. And I'd really like to open up for any questions, Your Worship, that Council may have.
Okay, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Ray. Councillor Brennan and I were away for a short time last week, so we missed your presentation. Could you explain to me, in the commercial quote-unquote version that was offered, where $47,000 was to be paid annually to the City of Nanaimo, can you tell me how you get to that number?
Sure.
And then let me just finish it up. Would you like to compare that for me to the $80,000 that Victoria gets, which is a municipality with fewer people than this one?
Sure. When we first rolled out this whole process, we were the first in North America to actually approach municipalities municipalities. A couple of the other companies in the United States used their own cable plant, and in some cases made very specific arrangements, but basically did not go to any level of government to extend that network. So when we started out, quite frankly, we were swimming a bit blind as to how to approach it. Initially, we said we wouldn't pay anything, and cities generally said, well, that doesn't really work too well for us. We then started to look at, well, what is the cellular charge? What do most cities charge for attachments on rooftops, on top of light standards, and what's the coverage, what's the range that those antenna start to cover? And then looked at what is Wi-Fi if we paid per attachment for Wi-Fi. What coverage are we buying with that lease space? So that was, we started to look down at that kind of level. Then the City of Vancouver actually passed a policy in February that said for Wi-Fi attachments on outdoor structures, the range is $250 to $500. So we have arrived at that same place because, quite frankly, Vancouver is to some extent, for the commercial side, set the rate. Other cities have looked at the free Wi-Fi option. The City of Victoria is a significantly larger number of access points. Their downtown alone is more access points than all of Nanaimo indoors and outdoors. And also it was based in part on a number that the mayor had put forward with respect to other services they were purchasing, and that's where they came along. If you break it down on a per access point, it's about the same as what it's within, I think it was $11 of what was offered for the City of Nanaimo. But once Vancouver set down that range, that really kind of locked everybody down to the commercial rates at that point. But we had started with a whole sorts of different ways of approaching, quite frankly, and ultimately Vancouver sort of drove the direction.
Follow up, Your Worship. Again, in the commercial setup, non-Shaw customers will have to log in. Correct?
Okay, to be
what kind of information do you collect and what do you do with it?
Okay, so to be clear, there's a sort of an either-or proposition. So for the commercial agreement, if we're paying for access, then it's just for Shaw customers. If the city were to consider the free option, we would probably look the initial login, initial time zone for the very first time we're to access the service would probably give us their name, address, phone number, and email address. The email address would allow us to just verify that it is in fact John Smith or Jeff Bray. After that, we are looking to design a password model. So once someone's logged in the first time, after that they would have a password that would allow them to very quickly, they don't have to go through that whole process again, and they would have to accept agreed use of terms like most other ISPs provide.
You would use that information for marketing purposes?
We would, and in the terms of agreement, it does indicate that we would use that to probably send them the odd email saying, we're noticing you're using the service, this is available in other locations. So certainly we would collect that with the intent of doing some form of marketing in addition to the other marketing we currently do.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Bray. I wish you'd come last week. You've addressed some of my concerns, certainly. Okay. Primarily, my largest concern was that of exclusivity and being unfair to other servers or other providers in our region. And I've been made to understand that that is not the case, that this is an option that anybody could have. Also, the health issue, I've spoken more with staff, and you addressed that again tonight as a 40-watt light bulb being the comparison. And I appreciate you coming tonight and explaining those to us. But the one thing I'm not totally understanding, a lot of people have lobbied me this week, and some of them are tourism operators and very anxious to have this service available for their tourists when they come to our region. And can you explain to me how a tourist who has a phone connection with another city or country could access it?
Most devices are Wi-Fi enabled, which is separate from whoever your cellular provider is. Mine's Rogers, because that's our corporate provider for our company. Other people will have TELUS, others will have Bell. If someone comes from another country, comes off the ship, for instance, as long as their device, whether it's a tablet or a phone or a laptop, is Wi-Fi enabled, they would be able to log in just as I've described. So it's the Wi-Fi enabling that allows them to access the network. Doesn't matter who their phone provider is, or even if they have a data plan with anybody.
Okay.
So it allows them, essentially, it's an invisible connection into the network, just like if you go and check into a hotel and you can plug that cord into your laptop and that's exactly what it would be for a tourist, irrespective of where they come from, as long as their device, and all these devices, they're making cameras now Wi-Fi enabled. I mean, everything's Wi-Fi. TVs are Wi-Fi enabled now, so.
And then thank you for enabling the people in this most recent national disaster in the Alberta to be able to access the service.
Thank you.
I can see that that's a huge advantage. Thank you.
Councillor Kim.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. I love the theory of it, or the principle, free Wi-Fi. I guess my more concern is the approach, and I guess the staff chose what you put in front of them and the high cash value. The 60-40 is a thing for me. I'm on the 40 side. I'm in the distant from Shaw. I don't subscribe to Shaw. And I know when I was at the convention in Vancouver while I was at the convention center, Shaw kept coming up, and it kept wanting to log me on. I'd have to log some information. It would cut me off all the time, so that bugs me, right? So I understand that part. So what is the distance of the 40%? In municipal buildings, you're offering free service, but everywhere I can log on, just give you my ID number. What am I giving you?
Okay, so how it would work if the city...
White site explanation, I guess.
Sorry?
White site. What white sites would we have? How do we get into those? How do we access the net everywhere?
If the city and council decide to do an agreement with us and we want free Wi-Fi for everybody, if we were in Shaw Auditorium, anyone sitting in the audience would be able to log in as I've described. If we've got access points on streetlights along Commercial, they'd be able to log in from there, and it's exactly how I've described it. If I walk into the Keg, that's still only for Shaw customers, because that's a private business that we have an agreement with the Keg. So the free Wi-Fi would be for people accessing it from anywhere we've placed it on or in public space.
And so with the offer of our high cash value, the $47,000, I can access everywhere?
No.
That's the thing. I only can access certain websites.
It's one or the other, and essentially, it's to be sort of clear, is we probably wouldn't pay for the right to give away our service for free. We sort of want to have some differentiation for our customers who are paying us for internet and getting this as a value add. But we're quite open to different cities who've landed on different values for them between the commercial and the free Wi-Fi, and we're happy to engage in all of those types of things, either one.
Thank you. That's my questions for that.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Worship. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my colleagues' days. I'm 22 years old. I have no internet account. I have this. That's it. And it's on Virgin. What do I do? Can I buy this service?
We haven't yet set up a subscription-based service. We're looking at that. The reality is that, and this is one of the things, again, about Wi-Fi, which makes it unique, is I can walk down, Nanaimo and walk into almost any location and get some form of free Wi-Fi, whether it's from Shaw, whether it's at Starbucks with Bell and Data Valet, whether it's at another place that has a company called Fatport. So one of the reasons why a lot of people aren't buying data plans now is because there is in the urban areas enough free Wi-Fi. So you would probably be able to, you could go to your own library and get free Wi-Fi. If you were a Shaw customer, you would have access to free Wi-Fi and free internet at thousands of locations across Western Canada. If you were not a Shaw customer, but we did a deal with the city for access that provided free Wi-Fi, then when you walked into the rec center, you were watching the kids at their swimming lessons, you were at the library, you were walking down Commercial Street, you would have free internet at carrier grade speeds at no charge.
Yeah.
Really concerned about the cellular telephone capacity in our community. And I've been in places, I was in Langley one time when there was a quasi-civil emergency. And both bridges have gone down. Port Mann had gone down, the Mission Bridge had gone down, when I say that, out of service. And there was, it was snowing profusely. You couldn't get out on a cell phone. So back to the emergency access. have you considered, or would you consider signing an agreement that said that Wi-Fi access across the community at the request of emergency coordinator, for example, would be, you would entertain that? Would you be?
Well, certainly, just as I mentioned earlier in Calgary, when it was clear that there was a whole bunch of communication challenges for people dealing with just getting information out or getting information, we just opened it up for everybody. So certainly, we're always happy to entertain those things. I mean, we've actually signed with Nanaimo some years ago a letter of cooperation between Jim Shaw and Council some years ago. So we're very much in this community. I mean, we're one of the largest employers here. So our own employees would value that type of service. So we would certainly always entertain being a good community partner. The reality is, though, Wi-Fi is not cellular, so it's not necessarily a replacement. It's a great enhancement. One of the things that you've heard when you were trying to deal with the congestion in Langley is a cell tower antenna. Not to get too technical, but it's like a pipe. It's like a funnel into a pipe. And the funnel is really limited. If you're the only person using that cell tower at all, generally speaking, the theoretical maximum download would be 80 megabits. And it's covering kilometers of space. Our access point, which is covering meters, is 250 megabit download speed. So it can handle a lot of that capacity when you have a huge number of people wanting to make use of it. So certainly if there was a disaster in any of our cities, we would look as a good partner to leverage that, to deal with the emergency. It wouldn't replace emergency services. It certainly wouldn't replace, e-com and dispatch, but it could certainly help with people trying to connect with family, trying to get information. Certainly that would be something that we could always entertain, just as we did in Calgary.
Okay. Councillor Brennan.
No, I'm sorry. Carried away. I was going to make the motion, but I remember that there's another delegation. So.
Okay, Guillermo, you had a question?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment, remind Council that we also, to address Councillor McKay concerns about students looking for free Wi-Fi access. Currently, the City of Nanaimo offers free Wi-Fi access in all facilities indoors. So for those people, all they need to do is just basically log into our Wi-Fi, internal Wi-Fi. So what Council has in front of them tonight is an opportunity to bring to the city $47,000 a year for 5 years in a non-exclusive agreement, who is going to enhance the service that currently the City of Nanaimo offers.
Okay. Good clarification. Okay, I see no further questions from staff.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Now we have another delegation, Mr. Matthew O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell.
Hi there, Matthew O'Donnell. Great presentation. See why he gets paid the big bucks there. I actually, can't really believe that I'm even up here actually as a delegation for this because, it was already voted on last week. But, when someone from big business has to come and state their case 1 week too late, then obviously we've got.
Well, what's happened last week? It was defeated, and so it was brought back for reconsideration.
Yep. Absolutely, and I'll start right now, I guess. I do find it ironic that when 40 delegations appear for 3 hours to ask Council to consider more properly thought-out alternatives to secure Collaroo Dam Park and protect the community of Harewood, including a letter from the provincial MLA offering his assistance, Council largely ignored them, and in some cases delegations...
Okay, just a minute.
Oh, this is part of the delegation. I'm definitely going somewhere with this.
Yeah, well, we're dealing with Shaw only, okay?
Absolutely.
And no other issues.
I'm going somewhere with this. Thank you. Council largely ignored them, and in some cases, delegations were met with downright disrespect from their elected officials. Yet, when Council defeats a motion that would have worked to the benefit of big business, in this case Shaw Communications, there's an immediate call to reconsider because one representative wishes to lobby Council one more time and 1 week too late on behalf of his corporation, even after the motion was defeated.
Let me just make a point here. I just want to caution you now that you want to be careful on how you approach these things. Councillor Brennan and Councillor Patchy were absent from last meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
And they have the right, and Councillor Brennan chose to bring it back. It's got nothing to do with references to big business and all those things.
I actually
if a
totally
councillor is
see
absent,
what you mean, sir,
listen
but-
to me,
yeah.
listen to me, because I'm chairing the meeting, okay? And I'm just saying to you that it's not fair that you should make allegations that big business brought this back. 2 members of council were absent, and they had every right to bring it back, and they did. And that's
I'm
what
not
we're voting
making
on.
any allegations, sir. All I'm saying as a citizen of this city that I just find it ironic and interesting, and I'd like to carry on with my points about Shaw Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Thank you. It's very hypocritical, though. So basically what I'm trying to say is Shaw is a corporation with shareholders. The City of Nanaimo is a corporation, and its shareholders are the tax-paying citizens. Essentially, Shaw wishes to work or leech off city infrastructure to install Wi-Fi services exclusively for its customers. In return, Shaw will pay the city a ridiculously low amount of money for the use of public infrastructure for its private pay service. I believe this is unacceptable, and if Shaw wishes to use public infrastructure for this private business venture, then it should be made available to all citizens of the city and not just its customer base, which goes to the option that the city did not recommend. Another option Shaw presented was to provide Wi-Fi free of charge to all, only the city would be required to pay the hydro costs, which was not mentioned in the previous presentation. I also find this unacceptable because it now becomes a matter of fiscal responsibility, and I don't believe the city should be spending any tax revenue for services we don't need. The bottom line, if people wish to have Wi-Fi, they'll purchase Wi-Fi. If they cannot afford the internet or Wi-Fi, there are plenty of places in the city, downtown, everywhere else, where they can already access the internet for free. For instance, the City of Nanaimo's Wi-Fi service, public library, every single coffee shop in the city limits, etc. It's not needed, it's a waste of money. To conclude, either proposal Shaw made to the city is not beneficial to all shareholders of the city, aka the taxpayers. Shaw doesn't make business decisions unless it benefits its shareholders, and neither should the city. And on a side note, I don't believe that Shaw and its shareholders really care about the city's shareholders either, and they certainly didn't when they laid off countless Nanaimo employees earlier on this year and other Canadian citizens to outsource their jobs overseas. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say. And
okay, thank you, sir. No questions?
Thank you.
Okay, seconder? All those in favor? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Now, the motion, if someone would like to move that council direct staff to negotiate an agreement for a full commercial offering with Shaw Communications to allow for the implementation of a Shaw Go Wi-Fi service on city infrastructure.
I'll make that motion.
Moved and seconded. Okay. Councillor Brennan, are you going to speak to that?
Yes, I am.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that in the past week we have received a lot of communication from citizens who want to see free Wi-Fi access downtown and in all of our public parks and our public buildings. So it's a bonus. It's a bonus for our citizens, and they clearly want it. Victoria, Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary, and I don't know what other spots there were on the map we were shown, but northern Manitoba, all of those communities have been able to take advantage of this offer. It's a non-exclusive offer, so there's no monopoly. With regard to, I think the report is pretty clear. It sets out the economic opportunities. We've been lobbied by businesses too that want to ensure that their customers are able to access it. It's broad enough that there are coffee shops and hotels where Wi-Fi is available to customers, so it certainly doesn't limit people's access to Wi-Fi. It just enhances it. And the Victoria downtown services is the downtown for 350,000 people. That's, that's Saanich downtown, it's Colwood's downtown, it's a Esquimalt downtown. It's a downtown that's dense and So it's not really you can't make a simple comparison and say that Nanaimo has a bigger population than Victoria. The regional district certainly doesn't have a bigger population than the capital region district. So that, it just makes sense all the way around. And I just was really struck by how quickly people got on this and said, wait a minute, you forgot us in this equation. You can say that you're fighting on the good side and that you're fighting for the taxpayer, et cetera. That's not what they're telling us. They're telling us we want this service. So I'd really like to see us provide this service. So I hope that you see it my way and you can support this motion.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Well, I know Victoria is 9 square miles, and it has got a huge population. Nanaimo was 51 square miles, and we've got a bigger population than the city of Victoria. The actual city of Victoria. It's around the same population, and our area does serve quite a few, but this wouldn't service a greater area, and I don't think the Victoria Agreement services a greater area. If I go down there, I still have to log on. My concern basically goes to, one, the market share, and the 40% access if we don't have it open to everyone. We're gaining revenue on a bit of an advantage. So I like the theory, though. Free wireless. I fish all over the place when I go. If I'm on my phone or my pad, I'm fishing constantly. But now, openness, options, other companies, other systems, the benefit to community, a competitive fairness. I would see this preferred to ask for expressions of interest before we sign an agreement. If there's any other companies that would like to bid on something like this or make some offers to us so they know we've now got a cash offer on the table for some service, what we could offer. I like the idea of an RFP or EOI for evaluation. So just to have an offer come forward to me, and I agree with some of the last speaker that the company has a reason to do its work. And when I hear about the number of contacts I've had and to changing where these people are saying, well, you're forgetting about us. We get contacted by tons of people, tons of them, and we forget about them sometimes. So that, to me, is kind of a misnomer, because I had way more contacts about the Callery Dam, and we didn't shift our thinking on that one. So for me, the share, the benefit to the community, the competitive fairness, I'd like to see this go to an expression of interest to see what other offers we could get. Right now, we're sitting with $47,000 on the table that 60% of our public can get a good access in a part of most of the community, and 40% will get some. So mine is opposed to this right now. I'd like to see an EOI.
Okay. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question to staff is, could no other company, as we've discussed this earlier, any other company, TELUS, Rogers, could come and do this exact same thing?
Gentlemen?
Absolutely. It's a non-exclusive agreement. If there's any company in town or out of town who wants to put a proposal forward, we will come to council with that proposal, and it will be up to council to make that determination.
Thank you for that. And for me, I don't see this as a monopoly, as it was just stated. This can be done by anyone. If TELUS wants to come and do that, they can come and do it. Rogers, whoever, I wouldn't really see the need for an expression of interest. Anyone can come and do this. There's no monopoly. I didn't speak to this last meeting because I thought this was a slam dunk. This is a new service for people within our community, which brings a new source of revenue for our community, $47,500, which we didn't have before. And we were discussing earlier about a $50,000 shortfall for parks and recreation. This is easily one of the areas that can fill that gap. So I don't see why we would not support something like this. The internet is one of the things that connects us and allows us to get our messages out. I know I have people who tweet me all the time, and sometimes I don't tweet back to them, but they're unhappy about it. But that allows for people to be able to communicate. And so in this day and age, when we use the internet as a way of communicating with others, this is one of the areas that allows us to increase that communication base and also add add more money to our tax base, roughly of $47,500, which if we don't accept it, we won't have. And so for me, I think this is an easy thing, and this is actually doing the fiscally responsible thing of making sure that we're protecting, one, our tax base, and also doing what's best for the community at large. So I will support the Shaw Go Wi-Fi service as I did before.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, like my colleague, I'm not a tweeter, but many tweet, I know. But I just wanted to, Matthew, thank you. Whenever you speak, you're very eloquent. But I just wanted to make one statement, if you don't mind. I didn't think it was fair to make the comment that it gave us, the councillors, 1 week to lobby us hard to change our minds, because this is definitely not the case. When we sit at this council table, we make decisions based on what our own conscience tells us and what we think is for the greater good of the community. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if I got my head wrapped around all the details of this, so staff, please correct me if I make a mistake. This is not a new service for people in our community. This is a new service for some of the people in our community. This is a new service for Shaw customers. Let's all get that in our heads. There's limited access. It's only 60%. I wonder how many people that come from out of town, and Councillor Johnston referred to the tourism operators that were very keen. How many of their customers are actually going to be Shaw customers? And would they get access to this service?
Yes. Well, could we maybe get a staff response? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, absolutely. 60% of clients are Shaw clients, but also have in mind that we do have free Wi-Fi access in most facilities offered by the City of Nanaimo itself. So the fact that those 40% will now be able to use Shaw, they can still use the City of Nanaimo Wi-Fi free access in those locations. So all that Shaw is proposing is to install Wi-Fi equipment to enhance the free offer that currently the City of Nanaimo has for the taxpayers.
So, Your Worship, I just want to add that there is precedent for this, and even though the technology is different, we already do this with TELUS. We rent them spaces on public buildings and provide them the opportunity to provide services to their customers and only their customers, and we have never been too worried about who their customers are. This is just another service for another corporate potential customer of ours, so I think it's completely consistent with what we've done in the past.
Your Worship, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that this is not as broad as people believe. For example, the TELUS, the space we provide to TELUS or rent to TELUS for a tower is for TELUS customers. Everybody needs to understand this is for Shaw customers if we go with the commercial model. So as long as everybody understands that, it's not citywide, it's not everywhere you go, and it will be separate and distinct from the offerings that Shaw offers in the private businesses. The coffee shop that has Shaw to Go. Again, for a Shaw customer only. So as long as everybody understands that and doesn't think that they go out there tomorrow that they're going to be able to log on because we've provided this service. We've done it in a somewhat restrictive fashion.
But I think in a city state they could.
That's correct. They can still log on to the free city website.
Correct.
Sorry, free
regardless
Wi-Fi.
of what the affiliation is.
I'm sorry?
Regardless of the affiliation, in other words, they could go into the city site.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that a lot of the correspondence that we received over the last week, not one from Shaw, by the way, not one from big business, but from individuals within our community, there did seem to be some misconceptions about what this service was going to be. So I just wanted to make sure that they clearly understand what it is. It's not the panacea. If you're a TELUS customer, you're going to have to wait for TELUS to offer this service in order to gain access.
Your Worship, perhaps the best way to clarify this is by giving you an example. So let's assume I am a Shaw client, and now I go to Nanaimo Aquatic Center. So when I walked in the Nanaimo Aquatic Center, because I am a Shaw client, automatically the system will give me free access to the internet. Okay. Now, if I decide to go downtown to any coffee shop that is offer also Shaw Go Wi-Fi, I wouldn't have to re-log in. I will be logged in automatically because I do have that agreement with Shaw that allows me that access. So that's one example. If I'm a non-Shaw client, so the other 40% that Councillor Keith was referring to, and I walk into the Nanaimo Aquatic Center, I will be able to log in using the city free Wi-Fi access. If I go to anywhere else in town where we don't have a city facility offer free Wi-Fi, then I will not have that access. It's similarly if you have a Rogers or a TELUS phone, and if you go into an area that doesn't have coverage.
Great.
Okay, Councillor Pachi.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, most of my questions are answered, and to me, it's a question now of first come, first serve. If it had been TELUS or Roger or Bell, we would have found ourselves in exactly the same position. So, while I'm not too happy with Mr. Bray's explanation about the difference with the Victoria money, I guess I'm going to have to live with it. But I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay. There was a speaker, but I guess they've disappeared. So, Councillor Kipp, go ahead. I'm not trying to encourage you to.
No, they encourage me. Did staff negotiate, or was it an offer? Or did you negotiate the 47?
Your Worship, certainly staff negotiated, and as well, His Worship had several discussions with Mr. Bray as well, because the mayor knew about the City of Victoria deal and pushed very hard for Shaw to enrich the deal, and so there was lots of discussions both at staff and at the mayor level.
But very much negotiated.
And they enriched?
No, at this point, the answer is no.
Okay.
On point of order, my motion says that council directs staff to negotiate an agreement for full commercial offering.
Well, and staff did negotiate, I think in
This gives them an
fairness.
opportunity to one more stab. It doesn't,
So it's
what it says.
negotiation.
It says direct staff to negotiate. I mean, that was the staff recommendation.
Do you see any movement from the audience at all?
Nothing less than 47 if you negotiate.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that offer. Okay, the motion on before us here is that it's self-explanatory. I'm not going to read it a second time. Councillor Kipp, did you have something else? Councillor McKay, did you have something else? Councillor McKay?
Yes, no, I just wanted to clarify, Your Worship, that the amount that's being offered, as I understood it from one of the slides, was $350 per installation. And there was a set fee per. And it's just a number that created the difference between us and Victoria. Right.
Your Worship,
Mr. Bray is nodding too.
I'm sorry?
Behind you, Mr. Bray is nodding too, but go ahead.
So Shaw is currently offering to install 216 access points. 74 of those will be indoors, and 142 of those will be outdoors. They're paying us $350 per year per outdoors location, and $40 per year per indoor location. Those are the current numbers. Also means that in the future, if there are possibility to have more access points installed, through the city, we will change the revenue model as well.
So if there's an increase in numbers beyond that would reflect in a positive change in the figures.
That is entirely correct. If Shaw chooses to install another 50 access points, outdoor or indoors, that will increase the revenue to the city. Correct.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion passes. So we now move into, 15B. Mr. Ricker is here. Maybe, do you want to introduce the Mr. Ricker? Okay, and come down, sir. You have 5 minutes as a late delegation.
Hi. Thanks for having me on this evening. I'll just pass these. One for each of you from those. Yeah. Just to update you and give some further information. We've been in touch and in discussion with an engineering firm, Kerwood Lydell, KWL. They were established in 1975, have 4 offices, 3 in the province and 1 in Calgary, and they have 150 staff. I've been talking specifically with Craig Sutherland, Dave Murray, and Wendy Yeo. I have a question, and I don't mean it to be contentious. It's really just for clarity, that the aim, as I understand, of the city is to mitigate the potential breach of the dams in the case of an earthquake.
Well, actually, any natural disaster, really.
Yeah, just floods being different, that if, even in the plan now, to remove the dams, there's no mitigation for flood at that point.
Are you...
Go ahead, Mr. Hickey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, the reason that we're working to mitigate the risk is both for seismic and flood. And because if there was a really high rainfall and a flood, that would breach the dams.
Yes, correct. But the tender that you now have out, will that mitigate a flood?
It will mitigate the breach of a dams because of a flood.
The breach of the dams. That's just the point. And I really don't want to be contentious. I just want to... The whole issue has come up because of the potential breaching the dams and the water being released in a sudden flooding. Correct?
Yeah, I guess my understanding is that's staff's understanding of it too. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right, okay. And the reason I say that is that in simple terms, there's a process. The dam is here like this. There's a retained lake behind. If there's an agreed to level that the lake can be reduced to and a spillway put through at that elevation, you have a slight retaining pond behind for sediments and no elaborate waterway which is created behind it. The current tender has a rock waterway being created that will be buried when future dams are built. So considerations to it are basically that a lot of this work that will be done will be buried if new dams go in. And any design, any structure that's going in now isn't being designed specifically into the future dams. So designing the future dams and spillways all at once would be a logical or an effective way to do it.
Are you in agreement on this one?
Maritan, on the future dams, there would be no spillway. The dams essentially have the spillway that goes over top with a roller compacted dam.
Thank you.
So is there any spillway or any further development downstream to mitigate water exceeding the banks of the creek downstream, or in the future design?
I'm not sure that I understand your question.
Okay. The basic point is that there's value in designing both any deconstruction and reconstruction together. It just, in any construction, it makes it much easier than doing one portion before there's a design for the second portion. So I don't want to get bogged down. I've only got 5 minutes, but I'll answer any questions. So really, what we're proposing is a simpler approach to retain an area behind the existing dams, the lake bottom, to leave it undisturbed so that it will retain any sediments that come down. If the dams are taken out completely, then it's open to sediments flowing right through. So it's basically a minor or more minor way of approaching the relief of the water and maintaining a water level acceptable, and this is an important point, acceptable to dam safety. And then doing a design, a comprehensive design, and moving that into a full build at a later point. So it is an engineering firm, well qualified, as you can see, that are willing to look at this. And what we would need to move forward, just to be clear, because I think that's a clarity necessary, is an expression of interest from the city to explore the feasibility of this approach. And it would be pretty simple steps to sit down at the table, and this is a collaborative approach, which would involve the city, dam safety, the engineer, and ourselves. And the aim is to come up with, from dam safety, what level of reduction of lake level would be acceptable to them. At a certain point, it should be acceptable to them. The dams are thicker at the base. At some level, a cut through would logically be acceptable. With that, with a level that's acceptable to them, the next step is for the engineering company to do a conceptual design and a costing on it. And because it's a lesser amount of work, logically it would be considerably less in cost. It could be fast-tracked, and a very early answer is going to qualify the whole thing, and that is with dam safety. A discussion with dam safety, roundtable in the city's interests, in everybody's interests, to find out if there's a level acceptable, and then proceed from there. So that's basically just more information, detail for you. Engineering company willing to participate. I think well-founded, and just really have the interest for a good answer.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any questions at this point. Thank you, sir. Councillor Kipp.
Can staff meet with the proponent and discuss some of the issues? I know you sent a letter out that said you possibly would.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Could arrange a time, that'd be great.
Okay, so we now move into question period, and these are agenda items only.
Move adjournment.
Second, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Oh. Are we adjourned?
Table a motion to adjourn.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Robert Fuller, 3350 Hammond Bay Road. This has to do with 9D, the borrowing for the water treatment plant. I was just wondering, is the cost for borrowing for the water treatment plant to be borne by the taxpayers of Nanaimo alone?
Your Worship, the borrowing is up to a maximum of $22 million. The total cost is substantially more than that. So there is other sources of funds that are taken into account. But the $22 million will be totally serviced by City of Nanaimo and District of Lancefield and SFN users, not taxpayers. It's paid through user rates, not property taxes.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, second. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
archaeological exhibit in terms of back to storytelling and back to how textile holds memories. The exchanges and the dialogues I have here, I've heard about Norwegian knitting patterns. I've heard about aunts and grandmothers and their quilts and sweaters. It's a very engaging medium to begin with, between the color aesthetics, the tactile nature of needing and wanting to touch these pieces. This is how they have life, as well as, again, often collective practice, meaning most of these pieces, well, maybe not for my mother in terms of her later work, but often this kind of practice comes with a group who is getting together, sharing tea, talking, sharing tips, telling where their lives are at, inspiring each other towards a piece, helping each other finish these pieces that then go out to be places of love and memory for other people as they're used as blankets or as quilts or as tablecloths or as sweaters that you wear.
Or sets for television.
Or sets for television. That's right.
It's a closure for you.
Yeah, there are layers of this closure and exploration. Closure, almost, it's more than closure. It's celebration.
Right.
Right. In terms of sure, having people come in and be inspired by what they see, having people come in and have an opening to start to talk with me about their own histories with textile and their families. It's a celebration of life and color and pattern. That comes from a place that is done by somebody specifically at home.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to throw things over now to our guy on the street, Dan Kahn, down in Victoria. Do you know what an idiom is? Well, I don't know if Dan does or not, but he's going to try to find out.
Today on Talk to Me, idioms. Hey there, would you mind pulling my leg?
No, thank you.
No? All right, thank you. Idiom, an expression of language that cannot be understood from the individual meaning of its elements. I read that online. I don't know what that means either.
An idiom, well, a stupid person, one. An idiot's many. No?
Can I get somebody to pull my leg?
Your leg?
Yeah. Would you mind pulling my leg?
No.
We know what they mean, but we don't know what they mean.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Do you know what an idiom is?
No.
Matching top and shorts? Come on.
Hey, today I can dance.
Bob's your uncle.
You got it right.
I remember one day coming home early from school, and my mom was in bed with a man who wasn't my father. And I said, Mommy, who's that man? And she said, oh, that's Bob. He's your uncle. Bob's your uncle.
Well, he is.
You have an Uncle Bob?
Yep.
Come on.
Don't most people?
You have an Uncle Bob?
No. Remember, I'm Venezuelan. Probably Juan, Pablo.
So you could say Juan's your uncle.
Yeah, because there's so many Juan.
What about it's raining cats and dogs?
Yeah. I wonder where these things come from.
You let the cat out of the bag. What does that mean?
Well, I don't know, but it depends if it's raining dogs, cats, and dogs. But if you have a cat in the bag, you're trying to keep a secret.
Right.
You're obviously carrying that cat around in the bag so nobody would know you have a cat in there.
Do you have a cat in your bag?
A cat?
Yeah.
No.
Would you let the cat out of the bag? Cat out of the bag.
It's a naval term, and back in the good old days of sail, whenever sailors were being punished, they were punished with a cat o' nine tails, the whip with all the ends on it.
Oh, I know it.
Anyway, whenever that comes out, that means trouble's abound. Somebody's going to be in it, and cat's out of the bag.
I'll keep an eye out for you. I'm going to see if you're coming. I'll dedicate one of my eyes to you.
So I presume in those days, hold your horses. Don't leave without me.
When was the last time you held a horse?
Oh, wow.
We're doing a show today about idioms.
Oh, you have to do it fast because my bus is going to go.
Oh, my God. Hold your horses. Would you hold your horse, sis? Hold your horse for a second.
Oh, I can't. Sorry.
Hold your horses. Hold your horses. That doesn't even work. There's an actual horse. Wow, what is that sound I'm hearing? It's like music to my ears. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Hold your horses. Next time you see me, talk to me, will you? Hold your horses.
That brings us to the end of this edition of Go Island. Come on down and say hello to Lee Rydell. Threads of Memory here at the Nanaimo Art Gallery until the end of June. There is a happening on Tuesday, June the 25th, 5 until 7, and then a dance event taking place here in the gallery on June the 29th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm out of time as usual. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Go Island is brought to you by German Auto Import Network. Clothing supplied by Catwalk Fashions. Kate's Hair and Aesthetics provided by Maffeo Salon. Rambas is a 100% gluten-free fast food restaurant serving raw and vegan meals. Rambas has 2 locations in Nanaimo, Alts Road and Stewart Avenue.
Whether you're pursuing a television career or looking for a new leisure activity, we invite you to join the Shaw TV Volunteer Program. You can gain valuable hands-on experience and acquire skills ranging from camera to floor directing. We're looking for high school or college students or adults who are eager to learn. Shaw TV is currently accepting volunteer applications. Contact us today.
We're there to bring it home. Shaw TV, your local voice. Go